Chapter 569. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts fell, forming a golden light curtain. In the midst of the violent sea of lightning that cleared the field, the pale golden sword defense became firm and then gradually rose up. The lightning from the sky was still dense and heavy, but it could no longer approach the two people inside the sword defense. In the face of the most powerful enemy in the immortal dreamland, this pair of non-phase master and disciple actually withstood it. The power of the combination tactic was stronger than expected. After Wang Lu gave his king pill to his master, the defensive power of the non-phase sword defense more than doubled. It seemed that for the 110th layer of non-phase method, the increase in power had reached the point of non-linearity. Unfortunately, due to the limitation of her spirit root, she was unable to break through the king pill. If she had Yuanying stage or even deity stage cultivation base, coupled with this kind of heaven-defying defensive method, perhaps even the heavenly tribulation would not be in her eyes. After inheriting the legacy of Ouyang Shang, she had painstakingly created this heaven-defying method for more than 100 years. Its mysteriousness was so profound that it made people sigh with emotion. Wang Lu and his master hugged each other tightly, so he could clearly sense the way she controlled her magical power. His biggest experience was, even though he didn't understand it, he felt that it was awesome. He had been cultivating non-phase method for more than 20 years, and that system was deeply engraved in the king pill, which could be regarded as profound attainment. However, compared with his master's non-phase method, Wang Lu felt like a layman. Let alone using it as a reference, there were many parts that were even difficult for him to understand. For example, he didn't understand that Wang Wu had 2 king pills, and there was a special skill in non-phase method to coordinate the operation of multiple king pills. But unexpectedly, at this time, after she incorporated his king pill into her own system, she could control 3 king pills at the same time without any difficulty. This was the accumulated gap of more than 100 years. Wang Wu's perception on the path of immortal cultivation was particularly amazing. Coupled with the legacy left to her by Ouyang Shang, perhaps no one in 9 regions could compare to her. And how could non-phase method, which she regarded as the foundation of immortal cultivation, be that simple? However, Wang Lu did not regret fusing the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword qi into the king pill. Although non-phase method was good, it was, after all, other people's thing. Wang Wu had her own difficulties in using non-phase method as the core, but he did not necessarily want to completely follow her example. Moreover, when it came to aptitude and perception, he might not necessarily lose to her. After all, she was able to deduce her non-phase method to more than 110th layer, and she relied on the inheritance that he left for her. Time passed by bit, but the lightning that fell from the sky became more and more intense, yet the non-phase sword defense remained firm and unbreakable. In the process of merging with his master, Wang Lu's king pill was controlled by his master. Although he didn't understand the principle of the 110th layer of non-phase method, his king pill gradually changed under this kind of operation. The first was the expansion. Wang Wu relied on the cooperation of the 3 king pills to support her sword defense, which was strengthened by the triangle that symbolized the most stable structure. However, in fact there was a big difference between the 3 king pills. Wang Wu's 2 king pills were peak level. Whether it was the quality or the total amount of magical power, they were far superior to Wang Lu's middle-rank king pill. Therefore this triangle was not so stable in theory. However, as Wang Wu combined the 3 with her non-phase method and continued to circulate her true qi, Wang Lu could clearly feel that the 3 king pills were rapidly averaging. Wang Wu's 2 king pills began to shrink and dim, while his own king pill rapidly expanded and shone brightly. In theory, in the path of immortal cultivation, there was no such thing as enlightenment. Thus, it was almost impossible for the predecessors to spoil the seedling through excessive enthusiasm. However, at this time, Wang Lu actually enjoyed the treatment of spoiling the seedling through excessive enthusiasm. Under the nourishment of Wang Wu's 2 king pills, he was advancing toward the high-rank king pill at an astonishing speed. Moreover, the process was actually smooth and steady. There was no instability in the foundation that was easy to occur when one's power skyrocketed. However, the price seemed to be a bit high. In just a short period of time, Wang Wu's king pill had vaguely fallen from the peak level of king pill. Wang Lu did not know whether this kind of decline in strength would cause permanent damage, but in any case, when one reached the peak level of king pill, a small level often meant more than 10 years of bitter cultivation, let alone Wang Wu, whose spirit root was not good. "Master, you take it easy," Wang Wu said. "When the 3 king pills are equalized, the non-phase sword defense can exert its strongest defensive power. Now, saving my life is the most important thing, so you've got it easy. Remember to give me compensation when we go back. At this time, you're still thinking about money? If you just give it to me, I don't have to think about it anymore. Okay, I'll give you 2 million spirit stones as medical and nutrition expenses. So you must hold on. Don't worry, I'm the #1 king pill in 9 regions, oh my god. Just as the two of them were halfway through their conversation, the heaven was impatient with this stalemate. An unprecedented purple-blue tribulation lightning fell down, causing Wang Lu and his disciple to lose their footing and almost fall to the side. My goodness, it's starting to get serious. It's a bit more powerful than expected. While speaking, Wang Wu's mouth slightly overflowed with a hint of blood. The lightning strike just now was too fierce and had already injured her a bit. However, the more important problem was that the heaven's attack power was higher than expected, and so was its endurance. She originally thought that the 3 king pill equalization array could withstand it, but now it seemed that this might not be the case. Although she could further weaken herself and improve Wang Lu's strength to make the 3 king pill equalization array more balanced, her 2 king pill equalization array would be reduced. The gap between the peak king pill and the high-level king pill was not small. Once it fell, her comprehensive defense might not be able to improve. After thinking for a while, Wang Wu couldn't come up with a better way. This set of method to control the 3 king pill equalization array ignored the effect of elixirs. Moreover, she was extremely poor, so where could she get elixirs? As for weapons and equipment, it was even worse. She was all alone, with nothing but the emerald green bamboo sword. As for the sword of Mount Kuan in Wang Lu's hand, although she could borrow it, she was afraid that it couldn't withstand the collision of non-phase sword defense and the heaven's thunder. If Lu Li's Skybreaker was here, she could completely withstand it, but the side effect of the Skybreaker was something she couldn't bear. While hesitating, Wang Wu suddenly heard Wang Lu's voice. Don't worry, wait a moment. The next moment, Wang Wu was surprised to find that among the 3 king pills, the one belonging to Wang Lu grew at an alarming rate. Moreover, it didn't rely on external support, but its own growth. Wang Lu, what are you doing? Wang Wu vaguely sensed that something was wrong and immediately asked through primordial spirit. There's too much innate vitality, so I burned it a bit. Bastard! Who told you to do that? Wang Wu was simply angry. Burning innate vitality like the heaven-burning blood technique in exchange for a short period of time was downright evil. When she was young, it was fine to use it occasionally. Above the king pill stage, the effect that could be achieved by burning innate vitality alone was already very effective. And in order to achieve the desired effect, the innate vitality was often burned for decades or even hundreds of years. How long was the lifespan of a Taoist master of the king pill? Could it withstand such a burning? Even if Wang Lu was blessed and had a long life, he would still die young after being burned like this. Did she want to see him die early by working so hard to support the sword defense? Don't worry, the innate vitality is just a primer. It's only been burning for a year, mainly to stimulate the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. Wang Lu explained unhurriedly. His king pill was a combination of non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi, but in the 3 king pill balanced array, the part that was really strengthened was the part that belonged to non-phase method. The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi was almost equivalent to being suppressed. On the whole, the strengthening of the non-phase method was very beneficial, but for Wang Lu himself, this meant that the king pill was out of balance. Of course, this was not a big deal. Non-phase method was extremely tolerant and could completely tolerate this kind of imbalance. However, the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi might not necessarily be able to tolerate it. This inherited method from the ancient sword demon was particular about advancing forward and overwhelming everything. When Wang Lu first integrated it into the king pill to coexist with his non-phase method, it took him a lot of twists and turns. Now that his non-phase method was powerful, the primal chaos sword chi was even more eager to give it a try. And now, Wang Lu was ready to stimulate the vitality of the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. If it was done well, he could take this opportunity to push his king pill to the high grade or even the peak of the king pill in one fell swoop. Although the risk was not small, once he failed, it was likely to cause the king pill to shatter. Moreover, as a result, there would definitely be many problems such as the instability of the foundation, the backwardness of other methods, and so on. However, he couldn't care so much. The further expansion of the king pill only took a few breaths of time. Under the stimulation of the burning innate vitality, the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi in the king pill completely broke out its fierceness. It crazily expanded to overwhelm the other half of the non-phase method in the king pill. In an instant, it was as if there was an extra living thing in the king pill. Many cultivators once said that the immortal level method itself was like a life. When Wang Lu's cultivation base was still shallow, he didn't realize it, but now, he gradually realized it. And along with the rapid growth of the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, the grade of Wang Lu's king pill also rose. From the high-grade king pill, it suddenly jumped up a notch and stepped on the edge of the peak of the king pill. From the middle-grade king pill to the peak, Wang Lu only took a total of 2 hours. Such a chance would probably be hard to come by again. However, Wang Lu didn't have time to sigh and immediately asked, "Hee, how is it, Xiao Wu, is it enough?" It's enough." Wang Wu softly agreed, but she seemed a bit absent-minded. "Hey, isn't it not good to be absent-minded at this time?" Wang Wu, of course, knew that it was not good to be absent-minded at this time. At present, her 3 king pills were all maintained at the peak, and the defensive power of her non-phase sword defense could be raised to an unprecedented level. Moreover, after that heavy blow from the heaven's thunder, there was a faint sign of an arrow at the end of its flight. This was undoubtedly a good time to turn defense into offense, a good opportunity to decide the outcome of the battle. However, just now, that kid Wang Lu's words made her unable to ignore it. "How is it Xiao Wu? Who allowed him to call her that?" Wang Wu, of course, didn't care about the seniority. Usually, when they quarreled on the non-phase peak, Wang Lu often called her a poor slut, but she didn't care. However, just now, his tone seemed familiar. She didn't know why she had such a feeling. As early as 100 years ago, she gave up all her illusions and never allowed herself to be weak enough to hope for those unrealistic things. When this kid Wang Lu first came to the mountain, some people did mention that some of his characteristics were similar to that person. However, she disdained it at that time. The past was already the past. He sacrificed himself not to make the future generations weak enough to only hope for the resurrection of the dead. The people who lived carried a heavy responsibility, which could not be casually thrown away. But now, feeling the strong arms and solid chest of the person behind her, she really couldn't hold back the hidden palpitation in her heart. "Hey, let me ask you something. Do you remember that you once made an agreement with me?" Wang Lu frowned. Is this woman crazy? At this time, if she doesn't hurry to reinforce her non-phase sword defense to cope with the increasingly powerful thunder bombardment, what's the use of asking these boring questions? Agreement? Of course, not long ago, before the heaven-bestowing child ceremony began, I promised to give full play to the advantage of having a big tool and make you fall in love with me. However, just as Wang Lu was about to open his mouth, he was suddenly shocked to find that the woman in his arms had become unprecedentedly weak. Although he had long realized that his master as a woman was actually quite beautiful, different from the otaku more than 100 years ago who was wholeheartedly immersed in cultivation, the current Wang Wu, if she didn't open her mouth, was a beautiful woman with a graceful figure, slender where it should be slender, and plump where it should be plump. However, she was, after all, a sword cultivator. In battle, her body was stronger than steel, so she would never feel weak. In an instant, Wang Lu seemed to realize something, so he could no longer suppress his palpitation, which drove him to speak softly. "I once promised someone that I would come back." "It's really you?" Wang Wu suddenly turned around. Her eyes were full of incredulity, as well as indescribable happiness. However, at this time, Wang Lu was horrified. Because at the same time, the pale golden sword light above his head swayed and then unexpectedly collapsed. Under the shock, Wang Wu actually lost control of her sword defense. However, the heaven would not let go of this opportunity. A black lightning fell straight down and went straight to the top of his head. In an instant, Wang Lu felt that all the hair on his body stood up uncontrollably. At the same time, feeling the oppression of this destructive force, Wang Wu angrily roared, "Don't get in the way." A golden sword light bloomed from her fingertips, and the non-phase sword defense pushed by the 3 king pills was launched. However, it was still a step too late. After a loud bang, the lightning column dissipated, and wildfire bloomed everywhere. However, the dark clouds that brewed the lightning gradually faded away. Obviously, the heaven was exhausted and could not continue. However, at the same time, Wang Wu also slumped down, and blood slowly overflowed from her 7 orifices. In her jade mansion, the 2 king pills shattered on the spot. A cultivator who was known for her perfect defense and had never been careless, eventually suffered a heavy blow because of a moment of carelessness. The power of the lightning just now was comparable to the full power strike of a supreme-level cultivator. Even if Wang Wu was in her best condition, she still had to prepare for a long time to deal with it, let alone the hasty sword defense. When the non-phase sword defense was shattered, she also deliberately used her 2 king pills to cover Wang Lu, so that the latter was not hurt at all. Her reaction in that split second was perfect. It was just that she could not hold on anymore. Wang Wu you. Wang Lu took a deep breath and tightly hugged the person in his arms. The king pill that had just returned to his control crazily operated, squeezing out every bit of its potential and turning it into life force that poured into her body, trying to repair her injury and re-glue the king pill. Of course, if she wanted to recast it after it was broken, it was just a fantasy. Especially under this kind of violent destruction, the broken core was almost equivalent to the death of a cultivator. But how could Wang Lu let her die? Even if he exhausted all possibilities, even if he knew that everything might be futile, he would never hesitate. Seeing that the breath of the woman in his arms was getting weaker and weaker, Wang Lu's arms unconsciously tightened. Don't sleep. You promised me that you can hold on. If I can fulfill my promise, why can't you as a master do it? At the same time, his innate vitality burned again. Although all the theories he learned from the Tang Cloud Hall told him that it was meaningless to burn his innate vitality at this time, Wang Lu would rather gamble on that 1 in 10,000 chance of a miracle. If he burned enough at once, perhaps the quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change? At this time, the woman in his arms gently opened her eyes, tremblingly stretched out her hand, and put her cold fingertips on Wang Lu's arm. You. Stop first, listen to me. As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Lu felt that his king pill was out of control again. Even the burning of his innate vitality was forcibly stopped and extinguished. Looking into the woman's eyes, Wang Lu felt a sense of emptiness. All of his impulsive thoughts were expelled, and his thoughts became clear and calm. Actually, I had imagined that he would come back, come to me on a rainbow cloud, and tell me that I did well. But people can't rely on fantasies to live. I knew that he was already dead, and people can't come back to life after death. Life is that precious, otherwise, who would cherish it? But, I never thought that you would actually do it. Wang Wu tried to smile, but it seemed to have affected her injury. She frowned slightly, and couldn't say anything else. Wang Lu immediately injected magical power into her. What surprised him was that her weak breath of life seemed to have recovered a little under the infusion of magical power. This was probably the magical effect of the 9 regions #1 king pill, which had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times. If it were someone else, not to mention the king pill, even a deity-stage Taoist master would have been turned into ashes. Wang Lu was surprised and happy at the same time. He continued to pour his magical power into her without reservation. Although the effect was small, it was still somewhat effective. The woman struggled uneasily in his arms. She opened her mouth to say something, but Wang Lu covered it with his hand. Don't talk. I didn't burn my innate vitality. I just poured some magical power. At most, the king pill will drop by 1 or 2 levels. This is something that I obtained through a fortuitous encounter, so there's no need to feel sorry for it. Wang Wu struggled for a while, but she couldn't resist Wang Lu's generous reward, so she had nothing to say. At this time, the sky above them suddenly buzzed again. Wang Lu was frightened. Is the battle not over yet? Whatever. If they want to come, then come. In any case, the opposite party is like an arrow at the end of its flight and doesn't have any killer move. I'll just have to rely on my body to resist a few waves. However, the next moment, he saw an unexpected scene. A young human figure, illuminated by the light beam, fell from the sky and slowly landed beside him. When that small body touched the black soil, it immediately let out a passionate cry. Baby? Wang Lu was stunned. How could a baby appear at this time? Could it be a child bestowed by the heaven? What the hell? Just now they had just fought a life and death battle, but now, a child inexplicably appeared. Was the heaven blind? But soon, Wang Lu found that the back of the baby not far away from him was red, and the cry also quickly weakened. He froze for a moment, and then he understood. This was the fire poison. Just now, when the black thunderbolt fell from the sky and was dispersed by the non-phase sword defense, the dispersed energy spread around, turning the ground under their feet into scorched earth. For Taoist Master King Pill, the scorched earth containing the fire poison was insignificant, but for the newborn little life, it was a deadly poison. Of course, it was not difficult to save him. As long as Wang Lu could spare a hand to help him get rid of the fire poison, it would be enough. But the problem was, he had a more important person to save, and this process could not allow him to be distracted. An inexplicable child bestowed by the heaven, and a woman who had been with him for decades, involving 2 generations of love, which was more important, even if he thought with his knee he would know. Therefore, after taking a glance at the child, Wang Lu took back his gaze and completely ignored it. He put all his attention on the person in his arms. His decision was clean and neat. But at this time, a faint sigh suddenly came from the sky. To save the adult or to save the child? I can't believe there is a man in the world who would choose to save the adult. Perhaps, the men in the world are not all without redeeming qualities. While speaking, the clouds in the sky completely dissipated, and the sun shone. The earth was full of vitality, and the scorched earth was overgrown with flowers and plants. In a moment, it was a sea of life. Chapter 570. After the sun shone, heaven's suppressive force gradually dissipated and the aggressive heaven's descent came to an abrupt end. This sudden change caught everyone off guard. Wang Lu used a great deal of willpower to suppress his curiosity. He did not look at the flowers and trees growing wildly around him, nor did he pay attention to the newborn baby who had just escaped from death. He did not even think about what was going on with the idiotic question of saving the adult or the child. He focused all his energy on his master and did not hesitate to give her life force. That heaven was obviously a retard, but retards also had their own benefits. This round of release of vitality without any reason had also benefited the seriously injured Wang Wu a lot. Her cheeks had already turned rosy, and she should be out of danger. However, Wang Lu did not dare to be careless. What if this was the last radiance of a setting sun? What if it was her period? Therefore, he continued to pour his mana into her body. However, after a while, he felt a sudden resistance coming from his master's body. Although it was not strong, it formed a wall with great skill and blocked the mana that Wang Lu poured into her body. This change was even more shocking than heaven saving the adult or the child. What did this resistance from his master's body mean? Could it be that she had already given up? Hey, don't give up on your treatment. You promised me that you would try your best to live no matter what. Wang Wu coughed and coughed out a mouthful of blood. She looked like she was in great pain. She did not answer and only looked at Wang Lu with a complicated gaze. However, the resistance in her body was getting stronger. At the same time, Wang Lu could clearly sense that the 2 broken king pills were losing their energy rapidly. In a few breaths, the full king pill's energy was completely gone and the king pill's fragments disappeared. In an instant, Wang Wu degenerated from a heavily injured king pill cultivator to an ordinary person without any cultivation. You? He never thought that Wang Wu would be so ruthless. Wang Lu was furious. Do you want to die that badly? Damn it, I worked so hard to extend your life, and you do this to me? Sure, you can die if you want, but let me enjoy myself before you die. Wang Lu was treating a dead horse like a living one. As he cursed, he simply undid Wang Wu's clothes. Anyway, he didn't know what to do in the current situation, so he might as well use his ultimate move and wait for a miracle. However, as soon as his right hand touched her clothes, Wang Wu suddenly grabbed it. You have a weak will to survive, but you're trying very hard to keep your chastity. Wang Lu gritted his teeth. Did you lose your poor IQ after the serious injury? What a perverse act. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard Wang Wu say angrily, "You're the one who's going against the law." Your voice is full of energy. Wait, what's that in your body? At this time, Wang Lu tightly hugged Wang Wu. He could clearly sense the changes in her body. His internal vision could even directly see the situation inside her jade mansion. He saw that above the ruins, dozens of golden dragons came from the void. After flying in the air with great momentum, they condensed into 2 golden balls. Then, the golden balls compressed and shrank, transforming into 2 dazzling golden cores. After the king pill was formed, the jade mansion was swept away, and all kinds of simple and unadorned decorations appeared one after another, making it full of Dixian spirit. It was even more beautiful than the original Jade Mansion. What is this? At this time, no matter how hot-headed Wang Lu was, he could see that Wang Wu's life was no longer in danger. It could even be said that her condition was good, so there was no need for him to do anything. It was just that. What was the matter with these 2 king pills that suddenly appeared? Backup pills, Wang Wu lightly explained. Women always have a few backup pills. Wang Lu firmly believed that this was the first time he heard of such a thing as backup pills in this world. If it was anyone else who heard it, they would probably think that it was nonsense. But then again, before he met Wang Wu, when did he ever hear that there was a king pill cultivator in 9 regions who had the ability to withstand the heavenly thunder? Common sense was not applicable to Wang Wu. In short, you've already planned it from the beginning? That's right. I've long felt that the original 2 golden cores are no longer useful. After being equalized with your golden core, their purity has decreased a lot. Instead of wasting time repairing them, it's better to replace them with new ones. The only problem is that the process of replacing the pills is a bit troublesome. Especially after your external true qi comes in, it's simply troublesome. Before the Jade Mansion is cleaned, the new king pill can't enter. However, your external true qi is endless, so the Jade Mansion can't be cleaned at all. What's more hateful is that the 2 broken pills that were originally decided to be discarded, you still want to glue them back together. Do you want me to become a waste with 2 waste pills? Wang Wu said and then turned her head to glare at Wang Lu. I was almost killed by you. Wang Lu had nothing to say. After a long silence, he silently withdrew his arm from Wang Wu's waist. Since his debut, he had never done such a stupid thing. Although Wang Wu's pill replacement tactic was unimaginable and could be said to have broken countless theorems in the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, it was even more impossible for him to predict that she had such ability. At that time, he did make the most rational choice. Well, when he was hot-headed, it was actually not that rational. However, if he calmed down a bit, he could more or less see the clues from Wang Wu's reaction. But at that time, how could he calm down under those conditions? Were it not for the fact that he had never let go of his non-phase immortal heart, he would have already gone berserk at that time. However, no matter how many reasons he found, it was still a big joke. Therefore, Wang Lu had nothing to say. He could only cover his face and run away. However, as soon as he turned around, he felt warmth on his back. He was hugged by someone. While he was stunned, Wang Wu's voice came into his ear. Although there have been too many changes, you're still as stupid as before. Previously, when we were on the mountain, you always made this kind of problem. But I know you're confused because you care about me. Being hugged by her, Wang Lu's body was slightly stiff. He wanted to say something, but he felt that he had 1,000 things to say and didn't know where to start. The relationship between him and the woman behind him was too subtle, which made him not know how to deal with it. Thinking about it, it was the same for Wang Wu. Being hugged by her tightly, Wang Lu could even hear her increasingly rapid heartbeat. It was quiet all around, but the atmosphere became more and more ambiguous in the silence. Wang Lu stood quietly, but his heart was getting more and more confused. And at this moment, suddenly, a cry came from the dense grass not far away. The cry broke the silence, and also broke the 2's reverie. Wang Wu took the opportunity to withdraw her hand and rushed to the source of the sound in a few steps. She looked down and clicked her tongue. It was that baby. Looking at the baby, Wang Lu also felt a headache. The child bestowment ceremony was originally used as a test to communicate with heaven, and the bestowment of children was never taken seriously from the beginning. How could it be so easy to satisfy these 2 conditions? They had to be truly in love and have intimate behavior. At least, Wang Lu estimated that it might be possible to communicate with heaven, but to get it to recognize their relationship and bestow a child was a joke. In the end, the child bestowment ceremony went through many twists and turns, and the original goal could be said to have been achieved 10 times or even 100 times more than it should have. Heaven's background was more or less figured out, but what was initially thought to be a joke actually became a reality. What should we do? Wang Lu pondered for a while and decided to kick the ball to Wang Wu. Wang Wu was shocked by the baby, but she gradually returned to her usual quick-witted manner. She walked around the baby, thought about it, and suddenly walked up boldly to hug the baby. Wang Lu was shocked to see this. This baby was actually a huge problem, but he didn't expect Wang Wu to take the initiative to pick it up. Could it be that after 2 lifetimes of love, her maternal instinct suddenly broke out. This was completely unreasonable. Whether it was his previous life or this life, in his impression, Wang Wu was absolutely insulated from the word maternal instinct. She could be a genius cultivator, she could be a dedicated cultivator, and she could be a maverick who disregarded the secular world's view, but she could never be a good wife and loving mother. As a result, when Wang Lu was in deep disbelief, Wang Wu's finger had touched the baby. As a result, with a cheek sound, the baby disappeared. The two of them were stunned, but soon Wang Lu reacted. It's impossible to create life from the void in the immortal dreamland. You can't create a real life. The so-called creation from the void, in other words, was an artificial life. Instead of going through the natural harmony of yin and yang, it was artificially synthesized by means of alchemy and refining. The creation from the void had troubled the immortal cultivation world for many years, and it had even been proved to be an impossible miracle. As for all the creatures in the group of immortal tombs, they were essentially just part of the immortal dreamland, and it was not an exaggeration to say that they were illusory things. In this immortal dreamland, the child-bestowing ritual was the combination of the characteristics of two illusory life forms by the heaven to create a new illusory life form. In any case, it naturally didn't matter in the immortal dreamland. However, Wang Wu and her disciple were genuine creatures, and did not have the characteristics of illusory things. Extracting the characteristics of the two of them to create a life form would only create a virtual image. Once it came into contact with a living thing, it would vanish. As for the other creatures, they could only live in the immortal dreamland and could not be brought out. Otherwise, when each cultivator entered the immortal dreamland, the group of immortal tombs would create a new world for them. No one knew how many high-level cultivators there were, and supreme-level cultivators were not uncommon. If they could walk out of the immortal dreamland at will, wouldn't 9 regions be in chaos? In any case, when the baby disappeared, Wang Lu was more or less relieved. However, when he turned around, he saw that Wang Wu was stunned on the spot. She looked lost, as if she was extremely lost by the disappearance of the baby. "Hey you're not expecting anything, are you?" When Wang Lu spoke, he felt that his heartbeat was vaguely accelerated. However, after a long silence, Wang Wu just sighed and explained with a smile, "It's nothing. It's just that I was going to rely on the tactic of mother depending on the son, to divide your inheritance. Now it seems that my dream has fallen through." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu felt that the familiar master had returned. The change in attitude was so fast that it caught him off guard. However, just as he thought of this, Wang Lu suddenly felt that something was wrong. "Wait a minute, did you just say that you want to rely on the tactic of mother depending on the son to divide my inheritance?" Hee, just a slip of the tongue. It's just a show of true feelings. TSK, since you mentioned it, I remember it. Now that you've achieved success and recognition, it's time to return the inheritance that I gave you before. Don't even think about it. Wang Wu covered her chest with her hand. "This is already mine." "You really have the nerve to say this?" Wang Wu rolled her eyes and suddenly smiled. "That's right. I've received so many benefits from you for so many years. It's not right to say that I don't get anything back in return. Then, I'll pay you some interest." The next moment, Wang Lu suddenly felt a fragrant breeze in front of him. The woman's figure was already in front of him. Her beautiful eyes were moving, and there was a charm in her pretty face. A light touch on his lips was like morning dew, clear, sweet, and refreshing. Next to his ear, Wang Wu's voice was faintly discernible, but it was like the morning bell and evening drum that stirred his heart. "Sorry, although it's not my first kiss, my technique is still a bit lacking. So, if you don't like it, forget it." Chapter 571. The fresh fragrance that gradually rippled between his lips left him with an endless aftertaste. Wang Lu gently touched his lips and subconsciously smiled. Almost the same lines, the same touch, made the memory of the two lives intertwined at this moment. And the figure of the beauty in front of him became blurred. In a trance, he seemed to see the junior sister who was crying in his arms and full of fear for the future. His heart surged with an endless desire to protect her, wanting to protect her safety at all costs. However, when he came back to his senses, the woman in white was already standing on the top of a hill with a newly plucked bamboo branch on her waist. Facing the setting sun, she stretched her infinitely beautiful body. The setting sun pulled out a long shadow, which was long and narrow. Even the shadow of the mountain under her feet extended all the way to him. Looking up, Wang Wu seemed to be high in the clouds, in the fiery sunset glow. After more than 100 years, the delicate and timid junior sister had grown into the fifth elder of the Lingjian school, the #1 king pill in 9 regions. Even his cultivation in this life had started because of her. Things remain the same, but people have changed. As for me, I am no longer the same person as before. On the top of the hill, the voice of Wang Wu clearly passed into his ears. I still remember that time in the savage land. You wanted me to live happily no matter what, 100 years, 200 years. Then you promised that I would come back. Later on you really did it, but nearly 150 years have passed. How many 150 years can a person have in his life? Of course, I don't blame you for coming too late. I just want to say that everything is different. Of course, Wang Lu knew that everything was different, but he also knew that what Wang Wu wanted to say was not what she meant. At that time, I once asked you why you chose me. You said a lot, but I won't say those nice things. However, I remember very clearly that you once said that my biggest problem was that I lacked a sense of responsibility, because I wasn't interested in anything around me, and I didn't care about anything. But at that time, with my mixed spirit root, I had to do my best to keep up with the progress of my senior brothers and sisters, so how could I have time to think about other things? Later on, you gave me your inheritance, which made me enlightened, greatly improved my perception, and also improved my spirit root. Only then could I really open my eyes, just like now. With that, Wang Wu pointed her foot and her figure soared into the sky like an arrow, leaving the mountains behind her. After an unknown period of time, Wang Lu could no longer see her with the vision of Taoist Master King Pill. In 9 regions, there was a strong wind in the sky. The higher one went, the stronger the wind, like an indestructible barrier. It was said that even true immortals could not resist the fierceness of the wind at the highest place. Of course, Wang Wu was far less than a true immortal, but the scenery that she could appreciate must be far better than most people. Senior brother, guess what I'm looking at right now? Wang Lu was silent for a while and did not answer. Of course, his vision at this time was not as good as that of the #1 king pill in 9 regions. However, he was the biggest witness of the crisis that nearly destroyed the Lingjian school 150 years ago. No one knew the crisis of the fallen immortal better than him. However, the more he knew it, the heavier it was. 150 years ago, it was you, senior brother, who supported the situation. Although you were just a small Taoist Master King Pill at that time, you led the situation with your own strength and temporarily resolved a big crisis that might spread to the whole 9 regions. In the past 150 years, I have seen all the heroes in 9 regions, but no one can compare to you. I have taken over your legacy, inherited your inheritance, and also have your responsibility. I don't know how far I can go in the big wave in the future with my ability, but senior brother, please believe me, in the past 150 years, junior sister really didn't slack off. Wang Lu thought about her daily scenes on Non-Phase Peak and felt that it was really difficult to accept the conclusion that she had never slacked off. However, considering that she was, after all, a woman, if he just turned a blind eye, then let it be for the time being. Moreover, from another point of view, she had really done an excellent job. Among the several elders of Heavenly Sword Hall, although her stage was the lowest, her actual combat ability was firmly in the forefront. In the whole 9 regions, she could be said to be one of the few experts. What was the concept of this? Those at the same level as her were at least peak deity stage or even supreme of unity stage. Those who could reach deity stage or even unity stage were basically the geniuses of the present age with excellent perception and aptitude. And almost all of those guys had been cultivating for less than 500 years. How long had Wang Wu been cultivating for? Not even half of them. Of course, Feng Yin and the others were not simple either. At the beginning, they each inherited the legacy of the Golden Generation. In less than 200 years of cultivation, they became the top experts in 9 regions, which could be called as a world-shaking achievement. At the beginning, the reason why Lingjian School was able to maintain its reputation as one of the 5 uniques in times of crisis was that it relied on the peerless method of suppressing the fallen immortals in the savage land. But now, the Lingjian School had a very high prestige solely by virtue of the Heavenly Sword Hall brand. Everyone didn't waste time. Thinking about it, Wang Lu could only smile bitterly when he looked at himself, who had just touched the peak of the King Pill and whose foundation was unstable. More than 100 years is indeed a long time. So, senior brother, what are you going to do? With that, Wang Wu's figure flashed and returned to Wang Lu's side. She looked at him curiously, looking forward to his answer. Wang Lu was silent for a while and then sighed. From now on, don't call me senior brother. Being your senior brother ended 150 years ago. And more than 20 years ago, I did the ceremony of acknowledging you as my master. Wang Wu was not surprised by this answer. In her impression, although her big brother's mouth was a bit vicious and his character was occasionally jumpy, after experiencing a reincarnation, he had changed quite a bit from the past. However, one thing had never changed. He knew when to advance and when to retreat. Of course, it was a bit hard to describe him as knowing when to advance and when to retreat. However, her big brother was indeed very proper when it came to treating his own people. Yes, he was the big brother of the golden generation, the savior of all the survivors, and the person who made the greatest contribution in that peerless meritorious service. However, more than 100 years had passed. If the identity of the reincarnation of the big brother was revealed, what would Feng Yin and the others do? At that time, it would simply be an unsolvable problem. Hand over the position of the sect master? Not to mention the fact that the Lingjian school had been built from the dying day to today, it contained a lot of effort from the 10 people of Heavenly Sword Hall. Not to mention the sect master of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. Giving it to a cultivator with the king pill would cause a huge sensation and put a lot of pressure on the sect. From Wang Lu's own point of view, he did not think that taking over the position of sect master was a good thing. He was still in the period where his cultivation was rising the fastest. It was best for him to focus on cultivation and experience without any distractions. Then, what if he did not mention the position of sect master, and only promoted Wang Lu to an elder of Heavenly Sword Hall and enjoyed a high status? That was still not feasible. At that time, when the Heavenly Sword Hall meeting was held, with just one word from Wang Lu, who would dare to openly oppose him? That power would not be inferior to that of the sect master. And if they turned a blind eye to Wang Lu and still let him be their lead disciple, when they met in the sect, Wang Lu would greet them as a disciple. Except for Wang Wu, whose worldview was different from ordinary people, who would dare to accept it? Who would really dare to see him as a disciple? In his previous life, the prestige of the eldest senior brother was actually an extremely cumbersome thing. It was better not to have it, so Wang Lu did not intend to expose it. Wang Wu said, but in fact, I can't hide it for long. Everyone will find out sooner or later. After coming back from the demon realm this time, your temperament is becoming more and more similar to the past. It doesn't matter. As long as I don't say it, they won't be able to confirm it, and they won't take the initiative to confirm it. And the root of the problem is that my strength and prestige are not enough, and I am not worthy of the title of eldest senior brother. But the gap between me and you is actually only 100 years. With my accumulation in this life, once I explode with qi, catching up to you is just a matter of minutes. As soon as Wang Lu finished speaking, he unconsciously shrugged. Because if this kind of words were heard by Wang Wu, she would almost certainly retort. How could a cultivator with void spirit root who has cultivated for more than 20 years to reach the king pill stage have the face to explode with qi? In the past few years, she had quarreled with similar topics on the non-phase peak countless times. But this time, Wang Wu gently nodded her head. Yes, I look forward to it. Wang Wu's back was facing him, so that people could not see her face. However, Wang Lu always felt that her so-called expectation seemed to not only refer to his rapid advancement in cultivation base, but also that he could become the omnipotent eldest senior brother again. And then, thinking of that, Wang Lu could not help but feel confused. After that, there was no word for a long time. Both of them had too many problems to think about. For example, for Wang Lu, he faintly felt that when Ouyang Shang traveled through the endless void twice, it was not just for survival. At least after the second time traveling and returning to 9 regions, the qualification of void spirit root was not a coincidence. Unfortunately, the memory belonging to Ouyang Shang was not completely inherited. It seemed that it was an inevitable loss in the process of traveling. So many things could only be guessed. At present, according to Wang Lu's view, it was likely to be related to the providence. He still remembered that Mr. Feng Yu seemed to have said that the providence of 9 regions was a joke to him. At that time, the golden generation obviously had deep providence, and it was reasonable to say that each of them was an expert who jumped off the cliff to pick up the secret books. However, in that crisis they were almost killed and injured. On the contrary, people like Wang Wu, who had bad providence, survived until the end. The reason for this was obviously not simple. Unfortunately, it was still not clear. But it didn't matter. With his King Pill stage cultivation base, it was useless to figure it out. If he really wanted to be the opponent of the fallen immortal, according to the current immortal cultivation route, he would not be able to reach deity stage. After no one knew how long, Wang Lu broke the silence. We have already sighed with emotion. Next, let's break through this immortal dreamland. Chapter 572. If it weren't for the quality of a professional adventurer that made Wang Lu regain his calmness in time, he almost forgot what the current main task was. Recognizing his lover in his previous life and his master in this life was only a side task. Although the weight of this side task was so heavy that in his opinion, even 10 main tasks could not compare to it. But now that he was in the immortal dreamland, there must be a beginning and an end. Moreover, the next thing to do was actually very simple. Ask the Heaven. Ask the Heaven was the route that Wang Wu strongly advocated and persisted in to the end. Previously, Wang Lu had asked her several times, but he failed to change her decision, so he no longer persuaded her. For the time being, he believed that she had the ability. Although Wang Lu did not know what she was so sure about, she would never harm him, right? Of course, this problem was even less of a problem now. By passing the test of protecting the big or the small, Wang Lu had successfully won the favor of the Heaven. The next time they met, it was likely to usher in an excellent start. According to the records of the Temple of Heaven, for thousands of years, the Heaven had never shown its personification part, but now it made an exception for Wang Lu. What did this mean? This meant that it was likely that the position of Wang Lu in the mind of the Heaven had been higher than that of the Temple of Heaven, which had been passed down for thousands of years. This was not incredible. For the brainless Heaven, such logic was normal. After determining the target, the two no longer wasted time and directly returned to the stronghold to recuperate, ready to find an opportunity to capture a Shintian-level nun. After returning to the stronghold, the two of them attracted a lot of attention. Of course, the focus of attention was not on the relationship between the two. This pair of non-phase master and disciple were both good at acting. A moment ago, they were still affectionate and sweet, but when they returned to the stronghold in front of the people, they resumed their previous attitude of mutual disgust and contempt, making people completely unable to see that the relationship between the two had undergone some qualitative changes. The reason for the attention was that they obviously carried the breath of war after a great battle, and Wang Lu impressively jumped from the middle grade of King Pill all the way to the peak of King Pill. In just half a day, he advanced by leaps and bounds, which made Xueqi, who had always been indifferent to interpersonal relationships, could not help but come over. "You? How did you do it?" As she said that, this big sister of Spirit Sword sect unconsciously put her hand on the hilt of the sword on her waist, as if she could hurt someone at any time. Wang Lu didn't mind. After several contacts with her, he knew that this person's character was just like this. Except for cultivation, she didn't care about anything else. Her degree of concentration was something that even Lu Li couldn't compare with. At least little Lu Li had a special liking for food. Moreover, under the training of her master, she was quite polite. But Zhu Shiyao couldn't do it at all. Although Feng Yin taught her how to conduct herself, she couldn't even be bothered to remember it. She felt that it was a waste of time, and it only got worse after she got the King Pill. It was said that the most exaggerated time was when she was cultivating on the mountain. By chance, she heard that the second elder, Lu Xian, had mastered the flying sword technique. Thereupon, she directly flew to the misty peak, pushed open the door of Lu Xian's room, and then facing the inexplicably surprised Lu Xian, she stabbed him with her sword. The result was, of course, she was subdued by Lu Xian's sword. When Lu Xian, who didn't know whether to laugh or cry, asked her, she stuttered, "I want to see the flying sword technique." Later, of course, it was Feng Yin Daoist master who personally came to apologize and then went back to teach her a lesson. Later on, it was said that Zhu Shiyao's condition had greatly improved, but now it seemed that it was just treating the symptoms but not the root cause. Because Wang Lu felt that Zhu Shiyao might slash him with her sword at any time to personally experience the fierceness of his new peak of King Pill. Alas, it's a long story. If you want to fight, wait until we get back. I'll accompany you to fight to your heart's content. It's a deal. Zhu Shiyao's eyes were literally shining, and even her speech was a lot smoother. Wang Lu shook his head. Inwardly, he only felt that it was interesting. This Zhu Shiyao was really a weirdo. In the past, there were more than 100 people in the golden generation of Spirit Sword sect, which could be said to be a gathering of elites, but none of them were as maverick as her. Moreover, in terms of talent and aptitude, Zhu Shiyao's potential in the path of cultivation was even stronger than that of Ouyang Shang. She could almost be said to be the #1 person in 9 regions. He didn't know from which corner of the world Feng Yin dug her out. Previously, for a long time, whenever Wang Lu faced Zhu Shiyao, he felt quite pressured. Among the cultivators of the same generation, there was only Zhu Shiyao whom he didn't have the absolute confidence to win. Even when he had some fortuitous encounter and his strength had advanced by leaps and bounds, when he turned his head to look, Zhu Shiyao was not far behind him, even close at hand. Considering the unpredictable stellar divine eyes, unless there was a crushing advantage in terms of absolute strength, who would dare to say that they would be able to defeat her? However, that was all in the past. After experiencing time travel and retrieving his previous life, Wang Lu's vision was completely different. He could look at his peers from a higher position. Not to mention that no matter how strong Zhu Shiyao was, at this time, she was only a low-level King Pill. If they really fought, she was definitely not the opponent of the peak-level King Pill. Therefore, when he said to go back and fight to his heart's content, only Zhu Shiyao would be in pain, and Wang Lu would be in charge of being fast. However, the story of the low-level King Pill to the peak level involved too many secrets, so Wang Lu really didn't want to say more. And when the others realized this, they no longer asked. It was just that Lady Boss Fengling seemed to have noticed something. Her suspicious eyes constantly moved back and forth between the master and disciple of non-phase. Just when Fengling was about to open her mouth, Wang Wu interrupted her, clapped her hands and began to drive them away. Okay, next, I'm going to capture Ask the Heavens. The scene is too big, and the level is too high. If there's nothing else, you guys can leave early. As a result, Fengling naturally jumped 3 feet high. What the hell? You want us to come and go at your beck and call? Are you ordering us around like dogs? Before she could finish her words, she turned around and saw Bai Shishwan's awkward face. She didn't know whether to open her mouth or not. Fengling's anger immediately subsided. Sorry, little Bai, I'm not targeting you. Once Fengling's anger subsided, Wang Wu would no longer be her opponent. Thus, the order was quickly carried out. Zhu Shiyao didn't care. In the past few days, she had fought to her heart's content and had long been satisfied. Lu Li had always been obedient, and a box of snacks was enough for her to pledge her life to repay. Bai Shixian didn't have any particular intention to come. It was the sect elder who fancied her King Pill stage and immortal beast body, so he asked her to come and help. Now that she was no longer needed, she also happily left. Cat girl Ling Yan didn't have any leeway to speak. Although Yu Xinyao was somewhat reluctant, since the 5th elder had spoken, what else could she do? In fact, their task was indeed over. In the past few days, under the command of Wang Wu, they had repeatedly attacked and defeated opponents whose stage was far higher than theirs, and obtained quite a generous reward. Those open heaven and harmonious heaven were not easy to deal with. Although in theory, they should be determined to serve the heaven wholeheartedly and had no desire for external things, in fact, each of them was very wealthy. And after being dealt with by Wang Wu's telepathic finger, they were willing to spend all their wealth to enrich the mustard seed bag of the Lingjian school people. This harvesting method was crude and direct, but the efficiency was surprisingly high. For example, the several Yin and Yang schoolgirls worked hard to do the task under Li Yan. Although it was safe and simple at most, they could get a few pieces of Li Yan's equipment, which was not that valuable. Of course, for a group of Shudan and Foundation establishment little girls, a piece of King Pill level local tycoon's equipment could be regarded as a good harvest. With the experiential learning and harvest, the following Ask the Heaven ceremony really had little to do with them. Not to mention anything else, if they personally went to the high-level assembly of the Temple of Heaven and were surrounded by a group of Yuanying and deity stage cultivators to perform the Ask the Heaven ceremony. Once something went wrong, Wang Wu didn't have the confidence to protect everyone. After sending the group of people away, the two of them quickly set up the array in the stronghold, and when their magical power was almost restored, they went out to catch the people. With the cooperation of Moonless, they soon locked on the target. Ping Shiwang, who was honored in the Temple of Heaven as one sword from the west, the one who swept away the group of devils. Among the 7 Shintian level monks, this person had the least seniority, but she rose the fastest. Because of her unconventional approach, she also offended the most people. For the other Shintian level monks, this ceremony was an opportunity to compete for the highest position, but for this Ping Shiwang, it was a danger of being unable to protect herself. As far as Moonless knew, There were at least 2 Shintian-level monks who wanted to mess with her, and there might even be 3. And no one wanted to protect her. 1 against 3, she was indeed in a very dangerous situation. Therefore, at this time, if someone took the initiative to extend an olive branch, even if she had doubts in her heart, she would not let it go. Not to mention that the master of Chaotian Palace was relatively strong among the harmonious heaven level, and it was difficult for Ping Shiwang to win over him. Her foundation was not enough, and the path to the upper level could not go through, so she could only rely on the power of the lower level to support her. And a powerful vassal king like Chaotian Palace was definitely a powerful card. Sure enough, after Moonless issued the invitation, Ping Shiwang hesitated for a moment before agreeing to meet in a manor outside Sky City. After receiving the address, Moonless clicked her tongue in amazement. I thought that the manor was a private property of the people, but unexpectedly, it was actually a spy set up by Ping Shiwang outside Sky City. There were still a lot of unexpected things. When Moonless arrived at the manor with Wang Wu and Wang Lu, Ping Shiwang had been waiting for a long time. Beside her, a woman with long and narrow eyes and sharp eyes stood quietly in the shadows, exuding a needle-like murderous aura. Moonless used her primordial spirit to introduce her to Wang Wu. Sister Wu, this is the first fierce general under Ping Shiwang. In the past, she was the vanguard of the demons and devils in Red Metropolis. Her strength is extremely fierce at least. I am no match for her. I thought she had fallen out with Ping Shiwang, but I didn't expect them to be in the same group. This is troublesome. I thought that after she left, there would be no one around Ping Shiwang for the time being. If she was alone, we would have a chance to win, but now. It doesn't matter, leave Ping Shiwang to me. You two are responsible for holding off that bodyguard, don't let her get in the way. But, there was no but. Wang Wu's move was clean and neat. She took a step forward and directly used her non-phase sword defense to suppress the whole audience. This move came so suddenly that even with Ping Shiwang's strength, she was still unable to react. Sitting on the chair, she was pressed down and caught off guard. However, her bodyguard reacted very quickly. As soon as she made her move, 3 dark lights went straight toward Wang Wu. Moonless clearly saw that these were hidden weapons quenched with ancient poison, which were very vicious. With Wang Wu's normal cultivation base, she didn't need to care about them, but now her focus was on a Shintian level nun, so she might not be able to divert her attention to deal with these hidden weapons. Therefore, in desperation, Moonless had to personally act as a meat shield, sacrificing her life source spiritual treasure to block the 3 hidden weapons. As a result, although the hidden weapons were blocked, the spiritual treasure was also damaged. Under the power backfire, her vision turned black on the spot. And when her vision turned black, the bodyguard had already launched her full strength. Her figure flashed and flashed to the side. Purely in terms of cultivation base, she was just a low-level deity stage, which was not much different from Moonless. Even if her actual combat ability was above her, in a fight, the outcome would not be decided in a short period of time. Therefore, she did not intend to fight with Moonless. As long as she could obstruct that woman in white and free Ping Shiwang, a full-strength Shintian was enough to decide the outcome. However, just as she was about to approach her opponent, another person appeared in front of her. The position and timing of this person's appearance were too good. Completely relying on prediction, he walked ahead of her on her path. She didn't have enough time to stop, so she didn't intend to change her direction again. The full-strength charge of a Taoist master of deity stage, even a mountain would collapse. A mere Peak King pill was tantamount to a mantis trying to stop a chariot. However, the next moment, a sword tip appeared in front of her. It turned out that the opponent had stretched out a long sword, as if waiting for her to hit it. This simple and unadorned long sword contained an extremely threatening aura, which made her heart constantly sound with warning signs. This was not something that could be forcefully collided with the body. After making an instant judgment, she waved her right hand outward, and her arm hit the sword from the side, wanting to swing it to the side. But the moment her arm and the long sword touched, she felt her mind suddenly sink, and the original battle plan unexpectedly collapsed in an instant, leaving only chaos in her mind. At the same time, Wang Lu promptly released his hand, took a step back, and looked at his opponent with a bewildered expression, holding her head with a smile. He, Skybreaker, as an ancient immortal sword, is incomparably sharp, but it also has a great side effect. How does the taste of this brain-dead aura feel? Chapter 573. After successfully taking down Ping Shi Huang and her bodyguard, Ping Shi Huang did not make any extra resistance. In fact, after seeing the mind of her trusted bodyguard being defeated by the Skybreaker, she sighed as if resigned to her fate. She took back the life source spiritual treasure that she had prepared to explode, glanced at Wang Wu, and completely gave up resistance. Then she lightly said, "You kill me." As a high-level member of the Temple of Heaven, her judgment allowed her to calmly deal with the situation in any situation. Although it seemed that she still had the power to fight, she was a peak deity stage expert, but the opponents were only at the level of 2 King Pill. In theory, she could defeat the opponent with one look and one breath. But excluding these prejudices, years of actual combat experience told her that these 2 King Pill were actually very powerful, especially the one in front of her. Although she was only in the realm of King Pill, her strength was at least at peak deity stage or above. Now that she had lost the upper hand, there was no need to continue to resist. Ping Shi Huang's calmness reduced Wang Wu's trouble, but it also made this victory a lot less glamorous, because Ping Shi Huang did not look like a defeated captive at all. Her aloof attitude, even if she was reduced to a prisoner, was not reduced in the slightest. "You kill me." Her tone was not so much a request as an order, and it could be seen that she was serious. Were it not for the doctrine of the Temple of Heaven strictly opposing suicide, she would have already committed suicide. "TSK, I actually met a strong woman." Wang Wu suddenly felt surprised. Most of the high-level members of the Temple of Heaven were politicians, and most of the politicians were two-faced opportunists. The performance of Ping Shi Huang was very unexpected. "Oh, there is no need to think so highly of her. She is just the result of weighing the pros and cons." While speaking, Moonless figure quietly appeared. After sending a gentle smile to Wang Wu, she explained, because she saw the true identity of Sister Wu's friend, she decided to die in order to live. Wang Lu pointed to herself and said, "My true identity?" Moonless smiled and said, "A chaotic species, isn't it?" Wang Lu shook his head. After recognizing Wang Wu, he removed the effects of his illusion. Anyway, there would be few opportunities for him to show his face in public, so it didn't matter if he hid his male identity or not. He had forgotten that he might be treated as a chaotic species. In fact, since the establishment of Tavern Heaven on Earth, there had never been a man such a creature for thousands of years. Even if ordinary people saw Wang Lu, they would only think that he was a relatively special existence with a relatively special appearance. In fact, in the women's kingdom, there was no shortage of women who were big and round like men. However, Moonless had fought his way through the invasion of chaos, so he was too familiar with the chaos species. He recognized Wang Lu after seeing him a few times. However, it seemed that under the effect of the telepathic finger, she had already let go of her irreconcilable hatred towards the chaotic species. Although Ping Shi Huang has no military achievements, the bodyguards under her command have repeatedly made great contributions in the war, and their understanding of chaotic species is above mine. Now that she has seen that you are a chaotic species, she only has a dead end. Wang Lu said, in order to prove his loyalty by dying? Yes, she is in a very bad situation now. She may be overthrown from her position at any time. If the news of her collusion with the chaotic species is exposed at this time, she will never be able to rise again. As long as she doesn't die today, regardless of whether she actually submits or not, she will be labeled as colluding with the chaotic species. She will not be able to clear her name. Moonless said with a smile, and for people like her, if her political life is over, it is better to die. At least after her death, no one can deny everything she has done. The value of this kind of person has been completely tied to political life and is incurable. Wang Lu said, "It sounds like you are very disapproving of political life?" "Of course." Moonless admitted without hesitation, "In my opinion, this kind of person is very ridiculous. They are simply neglecting the essentials. Whether it is Shintian or Chengtian, even if they become the supreme #1 person, what can they do? Under the watchful eyes of the public, every word and action must be cautious and not make mistakes. Their lives are not as good as mine, a vassal king with no political future. I can build moon capital on top of the palace of heaven. Who would dare? Even if the standard of the residence is a little big, I will be scolded. I can raise 100 harem in moon capital, and when they want to play with a woman, they have to be sneaky. I don't know what they are pursuing." Wang Wu said, "When you reach Shintian's rank, isn't there a blessing from the heaven, and your strength will be higher than before? For example, look at this Ping Shi Huang. Her aptitude is actually not as good as yours, but her strength is above yours. What's the point of becoming strong by relying on external forces? Cultivators cultivate themselves. And so what if she is Ping Shi Wang? If she really fights with me on the battlefield, I'm afraid she is not my opponent. Moreover, in my opinion, the stronger the external force, the greater the restriction. After the establishment of the Temple of Heaven, I have never heard of anyone who could transcend the tribulation and ascend. All the previous Chengtian are no exception. Wang Lu looked at Moonless with great interest. I can't see that you have quite a lot of ideas. I don't know if you have these ideas from the beginning, or after being pressed to death in the Palace of Heaven and unable to advance even an inch. Humph. On the other side, Wang Wu listened to Moonless' analysis, but she could not help but fall into contemplation. After thinking for a moment, she said, "Things may be a little troublesome." What? Telepathic finger is mostly ineffective against Ping Shi Wang. Wang Wu explained, telepathic finger is essentially a primordial spirit skill that targets the weakness of other people's heart. The social structure of this heavenly earth is distorted by external forces, so most of the creatures have congenital defects, but Ping Shi Wang, her obsession is too strong, enough to overwhelm all the defects. Take Moonless as an example. Don't look at her building a harem in Moon Capital, living a life of debauchery. In fact, deep in her heart, she has always longed for true love. Her lover died on the battlefield. If I target this point, it will be easy to capture her primordial spirit. As for the others, it is even simpler. Deep in the heart of most girls, they do not recognize same-sex love, which is distorted by the strong pressure of the social environment. As long as I trace it back to the source, I can disintegrate their heart defense. But Ping Shi Wang is now completely immersed in political obsession. To exaggerate a bit, her primordial spirit structure is different from that of ordinary people. Damn, so cool? Wang Lu immediately turned his head and carefully observed Ping Shi Wang. She looked like a graceful and luxurious woman, but her aura seemed a bit strong. He could not see that her primordial spirit was actually abnormal. Are the 7 Shenshens of the Temple of Heaven like this? It shouldn't be. Her situation is not the same as the others. Even if the others did not take advantage of the succession ceremony, they will not suffer a loss. Only she will not advance or retreat, and once she retreats, she may fall into a bottomless abyss. The level of pressure is completely not on the same level as the others. In short, your telepathic finger is ineffective, so how are you going to deal with this mess now? Wang Wu said, the trouble is here. During this time, we have turned the heavenly earth upside down, but we did not attract any attention. We relied on the telepathic finger to take care of the aftermath perfectly. But now, Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, I have an idea. If you have no other way, you might as well let me try. What are you going to try? Use your superweapon to correct Ping Shi Wang's primordial spirit and let her recall the happiness of a woman? If my superweapon is really that effective, I will first find a way to correct your 3 views. Hee, I'm looking forward to it. Wang Lu frowned. He always felt that his threat just now failed and was instead taken advantage of by this infatuated girl. However, regardless of that birdman, dealing with the problem of Ping Shi Wang was the top priority. So he walked over to Ping Shi Wang, and after a moment of silence he asked, just now I heard people say that your primordial spirit structure is already abnormal, and your 3 views are different from ordinary people, so presumably you will not care about personal honor and disgrace and gains and losses. So I will speak frankly. I believe you can still listen to me. Seeing that Ping Shi Wang completely ignored his existence, Wang Lu smiled and threw out the big news. I have a way to make you an immortal hero in the heavenly mountain world, although a martyr-like hero. You will die, but your prestige will far surpass all competitors, and even surpass the supreme Chengtian. The idea you insist on, whether others agree or not, will be implemented. The territory you rule will become a benchmark in the heavenly earth, and will be imitated by others. Ping Shi Wang opened her eyes. The scene described by Wang Lu had a great attraction to her. Although she did not want to die, death was actually the best result for her now. And if she could become a hero after death, that would be the best. However, was that possible? Of course it's possible. I'm not joking. In fact, it's not difficult to achieve the goal. Wang Lu paused and asked, You are a senior member of the Temple of Heaven, so you should have heard of Ask the Heaven. Ping Shi Wang was stunned. You want to use me to contact the heaven? Yes, the Ask the Heaven ritual requires the sacrifice of monks above the Shantian level, and it's a matter of great importance. The Temple of Heaven has only had a few examples for thousands of years, but you can use this opportunity to become a hero that has not appeared in thousands of years. Facing the coercion and temptation of the chaotic species, you resolutely sacrifice yourself to trigger the heaven's punishment and resolve the crisis of the heavenly earth. But you may also become a laughing stock. Unable to rely on your own strength to fight against the chaos, you must involve the heaven, which is the embodiment of incompetence. What's more, letting you, a group of chaotic hybrids, pollute the heaven is a sin that can't be redeemed even if you die 100 times. You're quite smart, but unfortunately, you don't know enough. In fact, we have seen the heaven not long ago. Seen the heaven? Impossible. You, a group of chaotic species. Wang Lu said. Why is it impossible? Is it because the heaven told you? Although you are called the Temple of Heaven, in fact, how many people have really seen the heaven? You're just quibbling. Empty words are just quibbling. What about this? Wang Lu said and slightly released a trace of breath, which suddenly made Ping Shi Wang's complexion change dramatically. It was a trace of life energy that he accidentally collected when he was recognized by the heaven for the issue of protecting the big and the small. It is indeed the pure breath of the heaven's blessing. But why? Wang Lu secretly sighed in pity. If she was replaced with a more devout believer, when she sensed this breath, she would not need to ask why, she would directly kneel down and kowtow. Unfortunately, Ping Shi Wang's faith was not pious at all. She was only pious in her belief in politics. You don't need to know why, but you should at least know that if I can get this thing, at least I will not be the enemy of the heaven. According to the doctrine, evil people cannot preserve the blessing of the heaven. Indeed. Ping Shi Wang gently nodded her head and began to quickly weigh in her heart. She could not accept all of Wang Lu's words, and there were many contradictions that were difficult to explain. For example, the chaotic species should be the enemy of life and death, so why did they get the blessing of the heaven? For example, since he got the blessing, then he should be the messenger of the heaven, so why did he need to rely on his own strength to communicate with the heaven? This completely didn't make sense. At the same time, Wang Lu also quickly launched his inspiration to conceive the answer. The problem that made Ping Shi Wang sink into contemplation. Of course, he was also aware of it. After all, it was just nonsense, and there must be some things that didn't make sense, but he was Wang Lu. A man who could make the impossible possible. What was this little dilemma? He had already thought of a theory that could convince the other party. So he put on an enigmatic smile, approached Ping Shi Wang and whispered, in fact, with your intelligence, it is not difficult to guess the truth. We are the real spokesperson of the heaven. As for the temple, after thousands of years of corruption, it has long stood on the opposite side of the heaven. Now, it is just a group of villains who steal the authority. Otherwise, why did the heaven almost never show up for thousands of years? The heaven has long been disappointed with everything in this world. Look at what the temple is like now. The ascetic monks are keen on the golden patch. A tyrannical person like Moonless can become a vassal king, and the high-level officials of the temple are full of opportunistic politicians. Tell me, such a temple, what qualifications does it have to be recognized by the heaven? Ping Shi Wang's brows locked tighter and tighter, completely lost in thought. But now, there is an earth-shaking opportunity in front of you. Sacrifice yourself, receive the true will of the heaven, and you will become an unprecedented hero. It is impossible for the Temple of Heaven to be abolished. Of course it will not be abolished. A bridge between the heaven and the mortals is necessary. The problem is that the structure and attributes of this bridge may not necessarily be preserved in its original appearance, isn't it? Wang Lu's voice became more and more bewitching. Think about it, even if we did not appear this time, how long can you continue to move forward in the temple system? Do you really think you have a chance to get the throne of heaven? Your idea has long been sentenced to death under the system, and you can only struggle at death's door. But if the heaven shows itself, who would dare to openly oppose you? At that time, who can shake your position? For you, this is simply a gamble with no capital but great profits. Tell me, what reason do you have to refuse? Then there was a long silence. After the silence, Ping Shi Wang took a deep breath. Good, I will gamble this once. As soon as her voice fell, Wang Lu took the lead to applaud, but the applause was slightly sparse. Looking back, Wang Wu and Moonless looked at him with incredulous eyes. Wang Wu said through primordial spirit, "Senior brother, you're the best." Chapter 574. Without further ado, the Ask the Heaven ritual began to be prepared as soon as possible. Communicating with heaven with a mortal body was, in theory, the last choice of the Temple of Heaven. Carrying out the Ask the Heaven ritual meant that the power of mortals alone could not solve the problem, which was a manifestation of their own incompetence. At the same time, the ritual was as difficult as ascending to the sky. According to the Temple of Heaven, the preparation work should last for at least half a year, and the various rare materials needed were countless. However, this was simply a false proposition. If the situation was so urgent that the Temple of Heaven could not deal with it in any way, how could it take half a year to prepare for the ritual? In fact, the whole ritual only needs the self-sacrifice of one Shintian level nun or above. The arrangement of those arrays has no practical significance. They just artificially increase the cost of communicating with heaven to prevent others from communicating with heaven at will. In the basement of the manor, Wang Lu read the scriptures of the Temple of Heaven on the spot and made a judgment with certainty. Anyone could see the perfunctory nature of this, but Ping Shi Wang seriously nodded her head and said, "It is true. When I first joined the Temple of Heaven, I also studied the knowledge in the ancient books. The Ask the Heaven ritual has been revised several times in the past 100 years, and each time it became more cumbersome and expensive. At first, I only thought that the belief of the Temple of Heaven was more and more reverent and devout, and more solemn toward heaven. Now, it seems that it is really necessary to artificially block the contact between heaven and the mortal world. Humph, this time, even if I have to sacrifice myself, I must receive the real will of heaven." Wang Lu smiled and did not speak. The so-called Temple of Heaven's deception was purely the result of his impromptu performance. He believed that with Ping Shi Wang's vision, she would not be unable to see it. However, at this time, she seemed to be convinced and put on the posture of a martyr. Of course, her belief in heaven was far from being as devout as martyrdom. It was nothing more than an act. However, right now, there were only her confidants, Wang Wu, and Wang Lu in the manor. Who was this play for? It was really the instinct of political figures to act. However, it did not matter whether the play was good or not. As long as she could play her role, that was enough. Late that night, after a hard work, Ping Shi Wang said with a sweaty face, "All the preparations for the ceremony have been completed." At this point, Ping Shi Wang, through her own power, in just half a day, completed the preparation ceremony recorded in the scripture, which required the joint efforts of hundreds of cultivators above the king pill level to complete for more than half a year. But ironically, the content of her effort was to adjust her immortal heart, making it truly a bit pious, so that she could smoothly move the heaven through self-sacrifice. With her strength at the pinnacle of the soul formation stage, she had to work hard for half a day to make herself somewhat devout. This was indeed quite ironic. After Ping Shi Wang finished her preparations, Wang Wu and Wang Lu simply stayed in her manor. Because the succession ceremony was tomorrow, they decided to disguise themselves as Ping Shi Wang's attendants and directly enter the venue. The second half of the night in the manor was long and dreary. Apart from Ping Shi Wang, who occasionally explained to the two the matters they should pay attention to before entering the venue, no one present was willing to open their mouths to talk nonsense. Even though the two sides had formed a close cooperative relationship, there was no trust or affection between them, so the awkward atmosphere lasted until dawn. "All right, let's get moving." Following Ping Shi Wang's words, the group officially set off. In the process of entering Sky City from the manor outside the city, there were some twists and turns, because in theory, the high-level monks should have gathered in the city the day before the succession ceremony. Ping Shi Wang spending the night in her private manor outside the city was easy to cause unnecessary trouble in public opinion. And when the group entered the ceremony venue, sure enough, they also encountered difficulties. The gatekeeper actually stopped Ping Shi Wang on the grounds that the entry time had passed. This was, of course, a joke. Although the theoretically stipulated entry time had indeed passed, the protagonists of the succession ceremony were the 7 Shenshens. But now, the Shenshens were stopped outside the venue. If this was not a joke, then what was? What's more, everyone knew that the so-called rules of the Temple of Heaven would never be applied to high-level monks. Even Moonless, a harmonious heaven-level monk, could unscrupulously open a harem in Moon Capital, let alone a Shintian who was late? Therefore, when Ping Shi Wang saw this scene, her face sank. It seemed that some people really intended to fight to the death in this ceremony. They did not intend to give her a little room to turn around, and even use this kind of trick. Were they looking forward to her reaction? Were they looking forward to her becoming furious because of this offense, making a disgraceful move, and opening the curtain for the upcoming failure? Ping Shi-Huang thought so, and the corner of her mouth evoked a smile. A group of idiots who don't know that death is coming. In the face of the gatekeeper's difficulties, she had only one way to deal with it. Get lost. As a result, the peak Yuanying stage gatekeeper flew out upside down, rolling all the way along the pale blue carpet at the entrance of the venue, and the blood spurting from his mouth stained the carpet into a mess. The venue was completely silent. The thousands of monks gathered at the ceremony were still whispering to each other, seizing the last bit of time before the official star of the ceremony to communicate. But at this time, they were all speechless as they stared at the entrance, waiting for the appearance of an uninvited guest. Ping Shi-Huang, facing the eyes of the crowd, strode forward. Every step she took seemed to be sonorous and powerful, firmly catching everyone's attention. On the high platform of the ceremony, several Shenshens looked gloomy. In their view, this opponent, who was doomed to lose her reputation, seemed to have chosen the path of a life-and-death struggle. Every step she took on the pale blue carpet was smashing the hidden rules of the Temple of Heaven that had been passed down for thousands of years. Since the establishment of the Temple of Heaven, there had never been someone who dared to break into the venue in such a violent manner. Ping Shi-Huang was simply a pioneer. At this time, the Supreme Cheng Tian, who originally intended to remain neutral, could not sit still. This was the last grand ceremony of heaven that she would preside over in her career. She originally intended to use a smooth and even mediocre ceremony as a farewell to the supreme throne, but now it seemed impossible. As the person with the highest cultivation base in the venue, when she stood up, the thousands of people in the venue felt suffocated. The pressure of the supreme level and the aura of Cheng Tian's throne superimposed. For a moment, it was as if the heaven had descended, making these believers of the heavens silent like cicadas in winter. However, Ping Shi-Huang turned a blind eye to it, and her pace became more stable. Behind her, the loyal bodyguard could not help but raise her head. This was because her master was already walking on a path of death. Every step she took was burning her own self, like a sacrifice to receive the will of the heavens. After a few steps, she had completely become an incomparably devout believer. Her immortal heart was so clear that it was almost transparent, and a huge amount of immortal spirit energy was overflowing from it. Thousands of people were dumbfounded, the 6 Shenshens on the high platform were dumbfounded, and even the Supreme Cheng Tian was also dumbfounded. In history, only the saint closest to the heaven could have such a majestic and pure immortal spirit energy, and such a saint had not appeared in the world for nearly 1,000 years. Could it be that this Shintian Ping Shi-Huang, who was judged by many people to be eliminated in advance, was actually a deeply hidden saint of the heaven? The huge contrast caused everyone to be stunned. Only the calmest paragon Cheng Tian reacted immediately. She's sacrificing herself. She wants to ask the heaven. Quickly stop her. Don't let her blaspheme the heaven. The supreme nun of the Temple of Heaven roared madly. In her opinion, this was the crazy struggle of Ping Shi-Huang before her death. In order to seek a glimmer of life, she did not hesitate to report the mortal matters to the heaven, which was a great blasphemy. Once the will of the heaven really came, it would be a disaster for the entire Temple of Heaven and even the heavenly earth. However, her reaction was still a bit slow, because the first step Ping Shi-Huang took into the venue, she had already completed her self-sacrifice and got in touch with the heaven. That clear and pure immortal spirit energy was not her own, but the blessing of the heaven. The heaven had begun to descend. Under the pressure of the heaven, the supreme nun of the Temple of Heaven could not withstand it. After a roar, she helplessly knelt on the ground. She was a dignified supreme, but at this time, she was as weak as an ordinary woman without any cultivation base. It was not that the power of the heaven was too strong, but that she, as the supreme nun, had already been closely integrated with the heaven, willing to be its vassal, and simply unable to resist the will of the heaven. At the same time, Ping Shi-Huang consciously climbed to a new peak in her life. The first time she came into contact with the will of the heaven, she knew that she had won the bet. Because the Great Will did not reject her, let alone deny her, she asked herself and found that she was not a truly qualified believer. Rashly contacting the heaven would only cause her to suffer the wrath of the heaven. Then the acquiescence of the heaven at this time undoubtedly meant that the speculation of the chaotic species was likely to be correct. Because this time, she carried a great mission to ask the heaven, so a little sin was not worth mentioning. Not only that, once the heaven completely descended, she, as the guide, would become the great prophet that the temple of heaven would need to worship for the next thousands of years. At that time, she would truly be immortal. With overflowing excitement, Ping Shi Huang finally walked to the high platform that symbolized the supreme status of the temple of heaven. Whether it was Shen Tian or Cheng Tian, they could not stop her footsteps. The only pity was that when she reached this step, she was about to burn out. However, at this time, boom! A muffled thunderous sound broke the holy atmosphere in the venue and squeezed in at an inopportune time. At the same time, a strong shock wave swept the venue, shaking the earth and the mountains. In the distance, a purple pillar of fire rose to the sky, tearing the earth and running all the way to the sky. People's eyes could not help but be attracted by it, only to see the purple pillar of fire, like a drop of ink on a white paper, quickly spread out, and in a flash, half of the clear sky was obscured. This is. On the high platform, Cheng Tian trembled all over and murmured incredulously, "Chaotic invasion?" Chapter 575. Oh my God, chaos invasion. Just when many senior monks of the Temple of Heaven were horrified by the sudden change, Wang Wu, who single-handedly planned Ask the Heaven, also slammed the table and stood up. Before this, she had carefully deduced all kinds of situations that might happen during Ask the Heaven and made plans one by one, but none of the possibilities she deduced included this scene. In the distance, the purple flame that erupted from the depths of the earth was undoubtedly the fire of chaos, the ubiquitous demonic fire that ignited the chaotic world. That kind of flame was strongly infectious and corrosive, and was considered a symbol of filth and degeneration. And when the fire of chaos appeared in the heavenly earth, it meant that the Chaos Invasion War had begun. The arrival of the heaven, the invasion of chaos. This was not a coincidence. When Ping Shi Huang sacrificed herself to receive the will of the heaven, Wang Wu could clearly feel that the structure of the entire heavenly earth had undergone subtle changes. Then the demonic fire soared to the sky. From the cave opened by the demonic fire, thousands of chaotic creatures surged out and greedily looked at this beautiful land. At the same time, the female cultivators of the heavenly earth fell into a great panic. The chaos invasion had happened more than once, but none of them were so sudden and so aggressive. Don't panic. The leader of the Temple of Heaven issued a sharp voice, which was so piercing that it made people feel like their heads were splitting, but it also expelled the panic and confusion in everyone's heart in an instant and stabilized the situation. This is not the first time we have seen this kind of scene, and I'm afraid it will not be the last. It's not a big deal. The establishment of the Temple of Heaven is to deal with this scene. We have the blessing of the heaven. In the past, we have won countless victories, and in the future, we will continue to win. Now, under the gaze of the heaven, let us completely expel the chaotic creatures. After the speech, the situation in the venue finally stabilized, but there were also people who questioned, why can the chaotic creatures openly invade here under the witness of heaven? Just now, Ping Shi Huang Before he could finish, he was rudely interrupted by Cheng Tian. That was not Ask the Heaven. It was just a despicable trick that made us unable to stop her in time. Under the watchful eyes of the public, she desecrated the heaven through the evil sacrifice, so the heaven punished us. So that's how it is, really despicable and vicious. It was my dereliction of duty. Although I've long seen through her wild ambition, I didn't expect that she would actually collude with the chaotic species in the lower realm. If I had known earlier, I would have risked my life to kill her. Enough. Now is not the time to pursue responsibility. Cheng Tian said solemnly. Capture the two people who came with her first. They are important suspects and might know something. But when she turned around, she was surprised to find that the two people who were still in shock a moment ago had disappeared without a trace. Find them for me. Yes. At the same time, 100 li away, Wang Lu leaned against a towering ancient tree, still in a state of shock. Oh, damn it. Luckily I ran fast. Otherwise, I would have lost my chastity if I were surrounded by those old women. After a pause, Wang Lu remembered something and couldn't help but shake his head. Poor Ping Shi Huang. This time he will probably have to bear the blame until he dies. On the other side, the one who was even more exhausted was Wang Wu, who was leading her disciple through the heavy encirclement of Sky City. It's a mistake. A big mistake. Wang Wu looked distressed. I never thought that things would change like this. As the ancient sages said, Life is like a pot of chowder. You never know what you will pick next. Damn it, you still have the face to talk? Such a strange chowder was made by Aya, right? Wang Lu scolded angrily. At the beginning, you strongly guaranteed that the Ask the Heaven tactic would win. Is this your unique way to win? I actually believed you at that time. I was also blind. Wang Wu knew that she was in the wrong and scratched her head in distress. This is really unexpected. In fact, there was no problem at the beginning. Who would have thought that after the arrival of heaven, it would cause serious damage to the structure of heavenly earth? Has it been confirmed that it's the problem of heaven? Otherwise, what else could it be? Wang Wu sighed and said, "This is indeed my carelessness. After the problem of protecting the parents and the children, I should have thought that there would be such a change. The establishment of this tavern heaven on earth was based on a certain ancient earth immortal's unforgettable hatred for men. But after you showed a good man in front of him, this hatred had a crack, so the foundation of the whole tavern heaven on earth was shaken. You are really a scourge." Wang Lu rolled his eyes at her. "Damn, according to what you said, I should have left you to protect the children without hesitation? Yes, if you didn't desperately pour your true energy into me, I wouldn't have to be so cautious when I changed my elixir. You're just causing trouble, okay? Just you wait. There will be a day when you regret it." Wang Wu sneered a few times, but suddenly felt a chill on her back. She didn't want to go further on this topic, so she changed the topic and said, "In short, the problem is now in front of us. The chaos invasion, our previous plan is basically completely invalid. We must find a new way out. What's more troublesome is that Yao and the others don't seem to have time to evacuate yet." "They haven't evacuated yet? What happened?" And this time, in addition to our Lingjian school, there are quite a number of cultivators who have come in. I'm afraid the number is close to 100. So many? Actually, it's not that many. Because of our high level of strength, we feel that this heavenly earth is not big and can't accommodate many people. But for those little girls of Foundation Establishment and Shoot on Stage, the Palace of Heaven is enough for them to digest for a long time. And there are no less than 100 cities like the Palace of Heaven in the heavenly earth. TSK, this time, the implications will be extensive. In case something happens to them, the aftermath will be troublesome. Wang Wu was not worried about this. It doesn't matter, as long as we don't admit it, no one will know that we did it. As long as they know that you and I were there when the accident happened, even a fool can guess that we did it. Then what do you think we should do? Do you still need to ask? Wang Lu said and looked up. It was obviously not noon yet, but the sky above their heads was already dim. Purple flames ignited the clouds and continued to spread. At the same time, if one listened carefully, they could clearly hear the cries of countless creatures in pain. The chaotic creatures and the human middle immortals were already at each other's throats. Those chaotic creatures, who had suffered for thousands of years in the lower realm, had endless killing intent towards the lofty heavenly earth. Once they met, they would fight to the death. Even if we don't care about the life and death of the other cultivators, if you and I want to leave this immortal dreamland, I'm afraid this is the only way. TSK, help them fight against the chaotic invasion? Well, you dog chaotic creature, watch me take your dog life. Wang Wu disapproved of this and tried to stretch out her finger to flick Wang Lu's forehead out of boredom. Get lost. Wang Lu slapped away the claw that reached out and then said, "Actually, I have a vague idea now. It's about the entire immortal dreamland. You see, the head of the heavenly earth is a woman who hates men very much. So on the other hand, who is the one who commands the hundreds of millions of chaotic creatures in the lower realm? The human middle immortals worship the heaven. So do the chaotic creatures have their own religious beliefs?" When Wang Wu heard this, she could not help but be startled. "You think? Thinking about the previous time when you and I joined forces to resist the heavenly thunder, don't you think that the strength of the heaven seems to be a bit weak by the standard of the immortals? As the biggest background character, it seems to be incomplete. So we might as well speculate that half of the task in this immortal dreamland is below." "Good fellow." After a long silence, Wang Wu softly said, "Your ability to open the hole in your brain is not bad. But I like it. If we want to play, let's play a bit bigger." Chapter 576. Phew, it's really an eye-opener, a hellish scene. Standing on the top of a dark and withered mountain, Wang Lu looked around and saw a dull and suffocating darkness shrouding the earth. Thousands of bottomless cracks cut the earth into countless isolated islands. The purple chaotic fire burned in the cracks, burning all the creatures that came close and cutting off the communication between the isolated islands. Looking up, the sky was completely covered by a dark barrier, without a trace of light. Instead, from time to time, stinking filth flowed down, further polluting this dark world. This was the chaotic world, a cursed world. Legend has it that after the establishment of the heavenly earth by heaven, it completely abandoned the chaotic world. This was the gathering place of all the evils in the world, and also the absolute forbidden place for the descendants of the human immortals. For thousands of years, there had never been a creature from the upper realm who entered this world. Even in the countless wars of resistance against the invasion, the cultivators of the heavenly earth only eliminated and expelled the chaotic creatures. They had never tried to counterattack the lower realm. However, at this time finally, there were visitors from the upper realm. And this was the 5th day of the chaotic invasion war. 5 days ago, Wang Lu and Wang Wu successfully lured the high-ranking nun of the Temple of Heaven, Ping Shiwang, to sacrifice herself and launch the Ask the Heaven ritual. As a result, although the heavens successfully descended, it caused the structure of the heavenly earth to be unstable, and the barrier between the chaotic world and the chaotic world was broken. The chaotic creatures took advantage of this situation to launch an unprecedented invasion, and thus the bloody killing war began. Over the past 5 days, the heavenly earth had undergone earth-shaking changes. Because the barrier between the two worlds was completely destroyed, the scale of this invasion was unprecedented. The gap between the two worlds could appear in any corner of the heavenly earth, and the chaotic creatures could appear from anywhere. There was no way to stop them. The heavenly earth had no choice but to enter a state of total war. Thousands of cultivators were mobilized to join the battlefield, and the world was in chaos. In the turmoil, the experiential learning from 9 regions suffered heavy losses. Those Shudan stage and foundation establishment stage cultivators even had an extravagant hope in such a battlefield. Some of them were decisive and knew how to cut their wrists and get out of here as soon as possible at all costs. However, there were also many people who wanted to cut their wrists but didn't know where to start. Fortunately, the people from Lingjian school were safe and sound in the chaos. Although the outbreak of the change was very sudden, Zhu Shiyao and the others had not had time to complete the exit procedure. However, after the outbreak of the war, Zhu Shiyao and the others, led by Moonless, immediately protected them in Moon Capital. Although the chaos invasion was cruel, Moon Capital was a heavy fortress that Moonless had carefully managed for many years. It was not so easy to fall. After experiencing several wars, it stood firm and seemed to be impregnable for a short period of time. After temporarily relieving her worries, Wang Wu took her disciple to make a risky move, taking an unconventional approach. They followed a passageway between the two worlds and arrived at the chaotic lower realm, witnessing the scenery of this world with their own eyes. Wang Wu was silent for a while and said, "No wonder the chaotic world hates Tavern Heaven on Earth so much. This Tavern Heaven on Earth is clearly using people sitting under their buttocks as a toilet. No one can stand it." Wang Lu deeply agreed, and at the same time, he secretly cursed that Dixian was simply a psychopath. At the beginning, when he saw the remains of the chaotic species in Moonless Moon Capital, Wang Lu was also surprised by the many ugly features of those chaotic species that were different from those of human beings. It was simply an encyclopedia of curiosity. At that time, he thought that these unique shapes and designs might be because the creator of this immortal dreamland had never really seen a man, but after hearing a lot of bad words about men, he could not help but have a lot of negative conjectures. Later, during the child bestowment ceremony, the extreme action of the heaven, which was almost brainless, seemed to confirm this point. Dixian had never seen a man, so he could not even give an accurate description of a man. But now, it seemed that those human-like chaotic species had simply mutated into a half-human half-ghost in an extremely harsh environment. No wonder when the chaotic species invaded the upper realm, they were filled with anger and madness. After being a cesspool for thousands of years, how could they not be angry? Wang Lu sighed and said, "After seeing the scene of the chaotic world with my own eyes, I admire these chaotic species even more. Such a harsh condition, but after thousands of years and countless generations, they have never given up their obsession. In this regard, they are much better than the seemingly advanced civilization of the heavenly earth." In his field of vision, he could clearly see many towers that ran through the sky. The base of the tower was usually erected on some large isolated islands, with a circumference of tens of miles. It was made of thick and solid boulders that piled up all the way up, 300 feet, 3,000 feet, 30,000 feet. It pierced through the sky and reached the top of the sky, just like a tower to the sky. Such a tower, even in the current 9 regions, could be called a small miracle. And in the chaotic world, there were no less than hundreds of small miracles. It was really unknown how many generations of efforts the chaotic species had to spend in order to complete such a feat in an extremely harsh environment. It's not the time to sigh with emotion. We've stayed here long enough, so let's get to work. Wang Wu said and patted Wang Lu's shoulder. Wang Lu understood and put his arm around his master's shoulder. The next moment, the scene in front of him suddenly became blurred, and the scenery continued to fly backward as fast as lightning. This was the first time Wang Lu personally experienced the speed of his master's full-strength flying sword. It was far faster than he imagined. In the past, on the non-phase peak, he always teased her about her non-phase method being the divine turtle method, and Wang Wu also admitted that her speed was her shortcoming. But today, it seemed that this shortcoming was only relative to her heaven-defying defense. Under the King Pill, no one could be as fast as her. Let alone the King Pill, even among the Taoist masters of Yuanying stage, there were only a few who could have such a speed, not to mention that Wang Wu was also carrying a person. Was this pair of King Pills so awesome? TSK. Should he consider learning from her and using the second King Pill? However, the price of multiple King Pill was likely to be a lifetime of no hope of reaching Yuanying stage, which was not worth the loss. While he was thinking, Wang Wu had already brought him to the target. It was a giant with a height of more than 30 feet, covered with abscesses and tumors. On the left side of its body, there were 3 arms, but the length and size were not uniform. On the right side there was only 1 arm, but it was so thick that it was completely out of coordination. Inside its body, there was an astonishing poison brewing. When the abscesses burst, the green thick liquid that flowed down could directly corrode the scorched ground. Based on his years of experiential learning, Wang Lu judged that this giant was at least close to the strength of a Taoist master of deity stage. At the same time, it was also a small leader in the chaotic world, which independently controlled a huge island and had hundreds of subordinates. Seeing the 2 people suddenly appearing, the abscess giant froze for a moment, and then the shortest and fastest arm on its left side waved, setting off a poisonous mist. But as soon as the poisonous mist spread, it was dispersed by a fierce sword wind. Wang Lu slowly retracted his trembling right hand and bared his teeth. With his current realm of King Pill, he used all his strength to blast out the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi with the sword of Mount Kuan. Because of this, his arm suffered a slight backlash, and the result was that he could barely disperse the poisonous mist of the abscess giant. Just now, after the sword Qi broke through the poisonous mist, it hit the surface of the giant's body. The sharp sword Qi that instinctively split mountains and split stones was completely absorbed by the sticky and elastic skin. These chaotic creatures that mutated from men were really awesome. This was just a small leader. When it came to a one-on-one fight, he was not its opponent. Fortunately, the main force that came to the chaotic world this time was another person. The abscess giant had quite a lot of weapons, and the left forearm was just one of the many weapons that were inconspicuous. If he got serious. However, it was too late for him to show his serious appearance. This was because a hand had appeared above his head. It was a slender, white, and soft palm. Wang Wu's right hand was not like the hand of a swordsman. There was no trace of a flaw in the palm, let alone a callus. Her skin was more delicate and smooth than any porcelain, but the power contained in this right hand could not be underestimated. Kneel down. Boom. The giant, who was 30 feet away, knelt down with a loud bang, and his heavy body even cracked the ground. Tell me, where is your leader? The question asked by Wang Wu was supposed to be a secret that the chaotic creatures wanted to keep even if they had to sacrifice their lives. But the abscess giant shook his body and completely succumbed to Wang Wu's will. His 4 arms pointed to one place, and his fingers bent down at the same time. Wang Wu looked around. The giant pointed to a blank space in the middle of countless islands, or rather, it was pitch black. There seemed to be a huge hole there. The thick black formed a vortex, swallowing everything close to it. And the bottom couldn't be seen. TSK, this immortal dreamland is really not creative. The leader of the upper realm is above the 9th heaven, and the leader of the lower realm is below the 9th hell. It seems that you really guessed it. These 2 are simply one. Wang Wu said and looked a little disappointed as she shook her head, but she was not in a hurry to go to the vortex. Because in this short confrontation with the abscess giant, it had completely alarmed the entire chaotic world. Wang Wu could see that from the countless islands around her, chaotic creatures of different shapes and forms rose into the air and rushed towards her. These chaotic creatures were a mix of fish and dragons. Most of them were just cannon fodder, but the number of strong ones was not small. If she relied on brute force, she would definitely be intercepted by them halfway and then fall into the endless quagmire of war. No matter how powerful the double king pill was, it was impossible to be the enemy of a world. Therefore, Wang Wu was ready to change her path. "Little Lu, let's go down there, hold me tight." As she spoke, she flew away. Her white dress was like a white lightning in the dark chaotic world. In the blink of an eye, she flew from the center of the island to the edge of the crack that separated the island. Then, under the astonished gaze of countless chaotic creatures, she jumped into the abyss. The next moment, a blazing purple flame spurted out from the abyss, completely submerging her and Wang Lu's figure. The chaotic creature stared dumbfoundedly at the purple chaotic flame that was burning more and more vigorously, as if igniting something flammable. In fact, whenever a powerful chaotic creature fell into the abyss for various reasons and was swallowed by the chaotic flame, such a scene would happen. And all those who dared to challenge the chaotic flame had never survived. The two invaders from the upper realm died just like that? At the same time. Xueqi. It's so hot. Wrapped in the primal chaos flame, Wang Wu's non-phase sword defense was no longer in its perfect round shape. It was somewhat distorted and deformed by the high heat, and the edge of the sword defense was rubbed into an incandescent state by the strong energy impact. However, the sword defense eventually supported itself so that the two people inside the sword defense were not really ignited by the flame. Now we don't have to worry about being attacked by a group of chaotic creatures. The fear of the chaotic creatures of the abyss is deep in their bones, so no one dares to besiege us here, although the taste of being burned by the flame is not much better than being besieged. Wang Wu said and tried to fan the cold wind with her left hand. Wang Lu scolded, "If you have the leisure to act cute, why don't you hurry up and go to the whirlpool along this vein?" The chaotic world was divided by countless cracks, and from another perspective, these countless cracks were like a dense network, extending in all directions. Of course, they also led to the whirlpool in the middle of the world. Chapter 577. Walking in the flame was a kind of romance. Wang Lu couldn't remember which immortal cultivation world senior had said so. It seemed that it was a peerless expert who grew up at the foot of a volcano and was born with fire spirit root. It was said that after his cultivation reached the Dashang stage, except for a few kinds of immortal world fire, no other kind of fire in 9 regions could hurt him. Ordinary high temperature would only help him restore his physical strength, and his favorite leisure activity was to bathe in the lava. That was the realm that countless cultivators of the 5 elements who specialized in fire were envious of. However, Wang Lu firmly believed that even if it was that senior who liked to make waves in the flame, if he was wrapped in the purple flame of the chaotic world, he would eventually die. This was a kind of extremely corrosive demonic fire. Hidden under the high temperature was a strong penetration that went straight to the heart. Wang Lu tried to put his perception out of the non-phase sword defense a little bit. As a result, it was captured by the flame in an instant. If he hadn't been prepared and cut off this part of his perception in time, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was not so much a fire, but more like a kind of demon. The more he tasted the taste of this flame, the more he could realize its horror. At the same time, he could also feel how powerful Wang Wu was, who isolated the chaotic demonic fire with her own strength. It was no exaggeration to say that this was a kind of power that could destroy the cultivation theory system established in 9 regions for tens of thousands of years. In theory, it was impossible for a mere king pill realm to accommodate a great god like her. For thousands of years, talented cultivators emerged one after another, and there were countless experts who were far superior to their peers in the same stage. However, could anyone in the king pill realm wander in the chaotic fire? It was simply impossible. Thinking to this, Wang Lu could not help but remember that she used to boast shamelessly that from the body forging stage, foundation establishment stage, Shudan stage all the way to Mahayana stage was only one of the 3,000 ways to ascend to the immortal realm. Although it was now adopted by almost all the cultivators in 9 regions, it was by no means unique and irreplaceable. Now that he thought about it, it really didn't seem to be a boast. But then, "Master, I have a problem in my heart that is difficult to solve." Wang Wu, while trying to support the sword defense, asked, Do you wonder why I am so powerful? Haha, it's simple. It's because I'm a genius. Wang Lu immediately retracted his question and said disdainfully, "Genius, my ass. It's not like I haven't seen your miserable face back then." She was born with a mixed spiritual root and cultivated to the point that she didn't even care about her female appearance. She could barely keep up with the tail end of the Golden Generation team. You just inherited my inheritance, which is why you have such a foundation. What's more, you've been cultivating for more than 100 years since then, so it's not surprising that you have such achievements. What I want to ask is, have you been hiding something from me for so many years? Holy shit! You bastard! Did you forget to inherit your conscience when you reincarnated? I don't remember you being so vicious back then. All these years, I've endured all kinds of hardships to raise you, and you actually dare to question me for hiding it? Holy shit! You've suffered so much, but all you got was shit and piss. The two habitually fell into a quarrel, but the speed of Wang Wu's flying sword did not slow down at all. She zigzagged through the crisscrossed deep ravines, gradually closing the distance between them and the whirlpool. When they were hundreds of miles away from the whirlpool, they were finally discovered. Thereupon, from the surrounding islands, thousands of chaotic creatures of different shapes soared into the sky and surrounded them. These chaotic creatures were even larger than the abscess giant. Many of them were hard to imagine that they evolved from human beings and had completely lost their humanoid outline. However, without exception, they all had powerful strength. If surrounded by them, even the #1 genius in 9 regions, King Pill would find it difficult to get away. Fortunately, the deterrent force of the chaotic creatures was too strong. Although they hovered in the sky and issued deterrent hisses from time to time, they did not dare to really dive down. They could only bombard the chaotic creatures with spells from a distance. However, when most of the spells approached the chaotic fire, they would be melted by the flame. A few of the spells with strong penetrating power, after being weakened by the flame, became insignificant. Wang Wu's non-phase sword defense was not afraid of group attack. Before the attack power reached a threshold, it was basically unbreakable. Moreover, even if something really happened, Wang Lu, the peak King Pill, could also contribute some strength. Thus, the two of them finally approached the deep whirlpool with irresistible force. At this point, there were countless chaotic creatures hovering above their heads, blotting out the sky and covering the earth like a layer of dark clouds. Although they knew that they would not easily approach them, such a large number of them still secretly frightened them. At this point, even if the chaotic creatures did not approach them personally, their various long-range magical weapons were enough to give them a headache. However, perhaps because they were too close to the whirlpool, the chaotic creatures did not dare to act rashly. In addition to roaring angrily in the sky, there was no other superfluous action. Phew, it seems that I have chosen the right way. When they were about to enter the whirlpool, Wang Wu slowed down a bit, adjusted her breathing, and then repaired the distorted non-phase sword defense. However, from her pale face and trembling hands, it could be seen that she had reached her limit. After all, the double King Pill is not omnipotent. Little Lu, I can only take you here. Wang Lu was surprised. Only here? What do you mean? You don't care about the rest of the way? I can't care about it. Don't forget that this whirlpool is the core of the chaotic world, equivalent to the heavenly Earth's heaven. That's the realm above supreme. How could I care about it? Hey, you're known as the #1 King Pill in 9 regions. Damn, you also know that I'm the King Pill? When I become the #1 supreme in 9 regions, not to mention the whirlpool, even if it's the treasure house of Shangjing sect, I will take you there. Wang Wu said and then spat out a long mouthful of foul air. However, that breath clearly carried a bloody smell. Although this journey is a shortcut, it's also my current limit. If I go one step further, this non-phase sword defense will collapse. At that time, you and I will die in the chaotic demon fire, so you're just throwing caution to the wind? You can't even enter the #1 King Pill in 9 regions, yet you want me to go there alone? Wang Lu said and then frowned. Do you know something else? I don't know. It's just that with the keen perception of a genius cultivator, I vaguely feel that there's something wrong here. I already felt it before I entered the chaotic world, and after I came here, the feeling was even more obvious. Wang Wu said and then pointed at Wang Lu's chest. Don't you think it's strange? This immortal dreamland is originally prepared for women, What's the matter with you coming in here? Wang Lu froze for a moment. He didn't expect her to repeat the same old topic. However, it seemed like she wouldn't deliberately talk nonsense at this time. Then, you mean someone in this immortal dreamland wants me to come in? Otherwise, there's no way to explain this. Before you, many sects have tried to send male cultivators in, but without exception, they all failed. Even a supreme-level cultivator couldn't help. Are you more special than a supreme-level cultivator? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu also understood. This also makes sense. Someone in this immortal dreamland wants to see me, but it's not in the heavenly earth. Because the high-level people in the heavenly earth have already met each other at the previous succession ceremony, but none of them knew me. Then the only possibility left is the chaotic world, and in the chaotic world, the whirlpool has the highest possibility. Yes, that's the case. Now that I've sent you to the door, do you dare to gamble? Although what Wang Wu said just now seemed reasonable, on the whole, it was mostly subjective speculation, and there was basically no solid evidence. Based on this alone, to take the risk and go deep into the whirlpool required more than courage. However, Wang Lu believed it was true. He prepared a little bit in the shelter of the non-phase sword defense, adjusted his state to perfection, and then tried to go out of the sword defense. Outside the sword defense was the primal chaos demon fire, and because it was close to the whirlpool, the firepower was unprecedentedly fierce. With Wang Lu's current cultivation base, even if he fully used the non-phase method, he would not be able to hold on for more than a breath of time. Therefore, he simply gave up the non-phase method and stood on the edge of his master's sword defense. As soon as he made his move, a swift and fierce primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi went straight into the depths of the whirlpool. The penetrating power of the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi was unparalleled in the world. Even in the blazing flame, it was unimpeded all the way until it went deep into the unreachable depths. What is this? Wang Wu asked. To say hello. Wang Lu said, if there is really someone waiting for me down there. As a man, Wang Lu made an exception to enter the country of women. The biggest possibility was that someone deliberately wanted him to come in. Thinking about how he was attracted by a strong suction at the door, this seemed to be true. But why? Why him? There were countless special things about Wang Lu. Void spirit root, non-phase method, unparalleled king pill. However, there was only one possibility that could really attract the master of this immortal dreamland. It was the ancient demon sword inherited from Zhong Shangming, the tombkeeper of the group of immortal tombs. Sure enough, shortly after Wang Lu made his move, the whirlpool began to shake violently. That eternal inextinguishable fire cracked open a gap, which extended all the way to the front of Wang Lu, as if inviting him to go through. Wang Lu took a deep breath and then stepped out of Wang Wu's sword defense. There was a hand on his shoulder, and his master's voice rang in his ear. One last question. Wang Lu blurted out, loved. What I want to say is, if something happens to you, your inheritance will be mine. Wang Lu thought for a moment and realized that she was encouraging him in her own way. He could not help but laugh. Don't be silly, as early as 150 years ago, my inheritance was all given to you. With that, he took a step forward, and the moment his foot touched the path, his figure disappeared without a trace. Wang Wu watched him go away and didn't take back her eyes for a long time. Then she couldn't help but laugh. TSK, isn't this the husband's stone? Chapter 578. Finally I see you. In the dark, Wang Lu heard a woman's voice. Who are you? Oh, I am the master of the chaotic world. You can call me the source of chaos. Ah, no need to look for me. For the time being, I am still invisible. In fact, it's better if you don't see me now. Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, Are you taking a bath? Ha ha. The woman's laughter in the dark was crisp and sweet, which had a soothing power. Although I'm not taking a bath, the situation is almost the same. It's not very good to see people. With that, the girl sighed and said, It's been many years. I finally see the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi again. Sure enough, it's you. Listening to her tone of being particularly familiar with primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi, Wang Lu immediately understood. Did you pull me in? Yes. The girl simply admitted, because I really want to see the successor of Brother Ming. Moreover, I heard someone talk about you, so I'm even more interested. Brother Ming. Someone talked about me? Wang Lu frowned upon hearing this. Are all of you still alive? That depends on how you define alive. The girl chuckled and said, when the group of immortal tombs was built, we really thought that we were dead. Resuscitation from the primal chaos was quite surprising. So they are the ghosts that have come back from the dead? Wang Lu said as his mind turned sharply. This group of Dixian ghosts seems to be dead but not dead, immortal for thousands of years. This was quite different from what he expected. At first, the opening of the group of immortal tombs was to excavate the Dixian heritage, not to invite those Dixian ghosts out. The present 9 regions was not the same as before the Age of Chaos. Right now, the level of Supreme was the #1 expert in 9 regions. The entire Wanxian League had at most dozens of them. Most of them were fake goods that forcibly reached the level of Supreme through various forbidden methods, and had no hope of ascending to immortality. There were even fewer true perfected monarchs. However, for this group of immortal tombs, the gatekeeper, ancient sword demon Zhong Shengming, had killed no less than 10 Supreme-level cultivators in his life, which was simply not on the same level. If such a group of ascended experts were to come out, the 9 regions would be in chaos. Just as he was thinking about it, the girl's voice sounded again in the darkness. I called you here because I want to see Brother Ming's successor, and I also want you to do me a favor. Help. Wang Lu asked. Dixian is very resourceful. Why would he need my little King Pill's help? It's precisely because you're so powerful that it's troublesome. The girl paused for a moment. That's why I need your help. Moreover, helping me is helping yourself. You must have a lot of questions about this group of immortal tombs and Dixian, right? Oh, I see. You're only answering my question because I helped you? Fair enough. In fact, unless you can help me, I can't tell you the answer even if I want to. My memory is not complete. There are many things in the past that I can't remember. However, the part that retains my memory is like fire and water. Moreover, her power is stronger than mine. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was startled, because the implication of the girl's words was, do you have a split personality? You can barely say that. The me in the sky and the me on the ground, when they come together, it's a complete me. Unfortunately right now, they are opposing each other with equal harshness, wishing to tear each other into pieces. It's really sad. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu felt powerless. The one in the sky regarded all the men in the world as trash, and the one on the ground was not much better. After the chaotic creatures broke through the barrier of the heavenly earth, they went on a killing spree in the country of women. Their attitude toward women was like slaughtering pigs and dogs. Moreover, when they went down to the lower realm, they saw with their own eyes that the number of creatures in the chaotic world was far more than that in the heavenly earth. And this was not because of the diligent bestowing of children by the gods. On the isolated island in the chaotic world, there were a large number of flesh and blood nests, from which new chaotic creatures were born. Those flesh and blood nests were actually the women of the chaotic world. A long time ago, when the heavens ascended to the heavenly earth, other than a few human immortals who were lucky enough to survive, the rest were abandoned on this cursed land. There were males and females, among which the males mutated into demons and ghosts, while the fates of the females were extremely tragic. They were completely turned into reproduction machines, and after thousands of years of evolution, they even became nest-like buildings. Just that I don't understand one thing. To you, females should be the most hateful species, right? Heh, that's right. There isn't a single good thing in this world. Jealous, fickle, deceitful, vicious. Apart from giving birth, women are useless trash. Since you hate females to this extent, why do you have the image of a female? Don't you have any feelings for yourself? Just as Wang Lu finished his question, he heard a burst of crazy laughter. Ha 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 ha. Don't have any feelings for yourself? What do you know? Little fellow who thinks he's smart. The thing I hate the most in my life is this female body. Every time I think of myself as a female, I can't wait to end my own life. Then why don't you do it? I've already done it a long time ago. As he spoke, the surrounding darkness was suddenly lit up, turning into a vast expanse of white. Wang Lu narrowed his eyes and focused his gaze in front of him. In front of him was a lump of blurred flesh that was constantly trembling. It barely had the shape of a human, but it was completely unrecognizable. The surface of the flesh was covered with horrifying scars, cuts, burns, corrosion, and so on. This was the cruelest execution ground that Wang Lu had seen in his decades of life. The executioner, under the condition of ensuring that he would not die, imposed the greatest degree of pain and damage. In fact, for females, this ugly posture alone was already a great torture. The sweet voice just now was actually spitting out from a crack that was covered with bruises on the mass of flesh. Compared to the scene that ordinary people imagined of the cherry lips gently parting, it was really a world of difference. Seeing this scene, even Wang Lu had nothing to say. This Dixian with a split personality had really gone to the extreme on the path of perversion. Just based on gender discrimination alone, he did things so ruthlessly that he did not even let himself go. That's why I hope that you can help me end this split situation, the meatball-shaped girl sighed. As a split body, I can't completely control my hatred for females, but at the same time, I also retain a trace of sobriety, so I can't completely agree with this deformed situation. Speaking of which, I actually envy the one in the sky. He can completely immerse himself in his own world and live a carefree life. What's the reason for this split? Wang Lu asked. It's a pity that I can't remember what happened in the past, but I must have experienced some serious stimulation. No one is born so perverted. This question is hard to say. There are also people who are born perverted. In short, how do you want me to help you? It's very simple. Show your best side to me in the sky. Show my best side? I in the sky firmly believe that there are no good men in the world, so I'll trouble you to play the role of a peerless good man to break her illusion, just like what you did in the choice to protect the big or the small. Wang Lu heard this and said curiously, there's no need to act as a peerless good man. I just need to show my true side. But are you sure this will work? Of course it will work. No one knows themselves better than themselves. Do you know, just your previous answer to protect the big or the small has greatly shaken me in the sky, so that the barrier of the entire heavenly earth to the lower realm has a flaw. And then you took advantage of it? You really know how to take advantage of it. This is very normal. Compared with me in the sky, me on the ground is the sober me. When the two need to be united, I will be the dominant party to really push the problem forward. Otherwise, are you going to pin your hopes on the heaven that knows nothing? Wang Lu smiled and didn't speak. With his habit, he wouldn't easily pin his hopes on anyone other than himself. The meatball in front of him said it nicely, but when she really swallowed the heaven, he didn't know what the result would be. Just as he was thinking, suddenly a cold voice interrupted. Peerless good man? What a joke. You actually want to use a false proposition to knock me down? That's simply wishful thinking. Wang Lu was shocked when he heard this because this voice was not unfamiliar. Not long ago in the heavenly earth, it was this voice that sighed that there were still good men in the world. The heaven had arrived. A white-haired girl walked out of the white light. She was petite and slender, but her eyes flashed with lightning and her power was amazing. Wang Lu tried to size her up with his eyes. After a moment, he felt his eyeballs swollen and couldn't look directly. The other party obviously didn't pay attention to him, but a Dixian, even if it was split, its strong sense of existence was beyond the endurance of King Pill level. Wang Lu very wisely chose to temporarily avoid the sharp edge because at this time, there would naturally be others who couldn't help but jump out. It's you? The voice of the source of chaos was cold. You actually dare to come to my territory? Same to you. When you sent those filthy creatures to my territory, when were you ever courteous? I'm just giving and taking. Giving and taking? What a joke. Since you're here, do you still want to leave? If I want to leave, you can't stop me. No matter how clear-headed you are, in terms of strength, I'm stronger than you. Then are you here to crush me with your powerful strength? No, I'm here to make a bet with you. The girl said and sneered, I'm tired of the tug-of-war with you. Don't you want to use the peerless good man to disintegrate me? Then come and try, I'll give you this chance. But if you can't do it... if I can't do it, I'm at your disposal. The split two quickly reached an agreement. The problem was, have you not considered asking for my opinion? Chapter 579. The arrival of heaven was not surprising. Although she had been living in seclusion behind the scenes for thousands of years, and even made her people mistakenly think that the so-called heaven was just an impersonal law, she was not cold-blooded after all. She could not be so heartless and treat all living things as dogs. Therefore, she could not sit back and watch the destruction of the tavern heaven on earth. Before descending to the mortal world, the situation of the war between the two worlds that Wang Lu saw was basically one-sided. The tavern Heaven on Earth was defeated in front of the chaotic army, and could not withstand a single blow. In the past wars, the victory of the tavern Heaven on Earth did not rely on its own strength. The existence of the barrier between the two worlds made every invasion of the mortal world could only advance along a narrow passage. In addition to being able to occupy some territories by surprise at the beginning, once the tavern Heaven on Earth reacted, the army would press the border, and the chaotic creatures would soon be defeated because of the narrow supply line. Even so, in every war, the tavern Heaven on Earth would suffer heavy losses, and the gap between the combat effectiveness of the two sides could be seen. After all, the girls of the tavern Heaven on Earth were enjoying life leisurely, while the chaotic world was a group of deformed creatures born to destroy. At the same time, the reproduction of the tavern Heaven on Earth could only rely on the children bestowed by Heaven. The efficiency was limited, so the population was not large. The number of chaotic creatures was not limited at all. It had been expanding at an alarming rate for thousands of years. If they were not under the control of the source of chaos from time to kill each other by refining poisonous insects, it would have been innumerable. The invasion of the mortal world this time was based on the wavering position of Heaven, and the foundation of the barrier between the two worlds was greatly weakened. The hundreds of Babel towers in the chaotic world immediately drilled through hundreds of passages between the two worlds, and the number of Babel towers was still increasing. The chaotic army of the mortal world blossomed in the tavern Heaven on Earth, and the female cultivators were unable to stop the expansion of the opponent. In the case that the quantity and quality were inferior to the opponent, being able to preserve the effective strength for a short time was the limit. Before Wang Lu came to the mortal world, the tavern Heaven on Earth had completely retreated in several fortresses. Among them, Moon Capital was one of the core fortresses. Under the arrangement of Moonless, Xueqi and others had to kill thousands of chaotic creatures every day, which was very enjoyable. But this was only because the most powerful chaotic kings in the chaotic world had not yet taken action. The passage between the two worlds could not accommodate them. If the situation of the battle continued, the passageway would continue to expand. By then, it would only be a matter of time before the entire army of Tavern Heaven on Earth was annihilated. Therefore, as expected, Heaven chose to descend to the mortal realm. Of course, she could choose to reveal her true form and sweep across chaos on Earth. However, it was naturally not as satisfying as directly attacking the root of the problem if she had to fight an endless stream of chaotic creatures. It was just that Wang Lu didn't expect that the duel between the two leaders would turn out to be in such a ridiculous form. Did you guys ask for my opinion before using me as a prop for the competition? The source of chaos asked curiously. Now that our interests are aligned, and this method is undoubtedly the most efficient. What do you think? Chong Tian sneered. What else could it be? It was nothing more than a lack of confidence in himself. Peerless man? This in itself was a false proposition. How can there be anything good in this world? Wang Lu was amused. That's not what you said at the child bestowment ceremony a few days ago. That's because I misjudged. Protecting the adult but not the child was not because you respected women, it was purely because the child was a girl. You're just abandoning a baby. Regarding this logic, Wang Lu deeply admired it. Because her logic was not wrong. The Heaven would always bestow a child to a girl. Therefore, protecting the adult and not the child could not explain the problem at all. From another point of view, Wang Lu's choice was no different from abandoning a baby girl, which was also the most hated thing by feminists. However, this piqued Wang Lu's interest. Initially, he had no interest in such a childish method, especially when it came to deciding the winner with a peerless man. It made him feel like a bird being pushed out to flirt in front of a rich woman. However, it was different now. This Heaven was so stubborn that it made Wang Lu's fighting spirit rise. He did not doubt whether he was considered a peerless man at all. The only question was whether he could prove it to Heaven. For a person with deep-rooted beliefs, it was as difficult as ascending to Heaven to overthrow her. Especially since this duel was a matter of life and death for Heaven and the origin of chaos, she could not admit defeat so easily. Just like the previous issue of protecting the adult or the child, she had originally admitted to it, but now she changed her words and accused Wang Lu of abandoning a baby. She was basically lying to herself. However, this also made her almost invincible. After all, as the saying went, no one could wake up a person who was pretending to be asleep. Coincidentally, Wang Lu was interested in trying to wake the person who was pretending to be asleep. Hey, Wang Lu sneered. You're right, I really have no confidence in this bet. Before Heaven could mock him, Wang Lu said, because I have no confidence in you women. Stubborn, self-deceiving. No one would sit at the same table with such a person. You can't afford to lose. Ha ha ha. The origin of chaos shrieked. You're right, there's no such thing as a good woman. What a joke. Heaven trembled in anger. Can't afford to lose? All right, I'll give you a chance. As long as you can fulfill my conditions, no matter what despicable methods you use, I'll admit defeat immediately without a second word. How about it? Do you dare to accept it? Wang Lu only smiled faintly. Admit defeat immediately without a second word? It sounded nice, but what would happen if they really turned against each other when the time came? Now that the upper and lower realms were mortal enemies, any method was allowed to win, so what was the point of lying? Besides, as long as the conditions were fulfilled, who knew what she would ask for? If she asked Wang Lu to castrate himself and become a woman to prove that he did not discriminate against women, would Wang Lu have to do as she said and become a celestial fairy? You don't have to worry about that. The origin of chaos said, as long as I'm here, she can't deny it. Moreover, the current split is largely based on the absolute confidence of both sides in their own ideas. Once you can really break her confidence, she won't be able to deceive herself even if she wants to. Previously, the problem of protecting the big and the small has already shaken the barrier between the two realms. Of course, it will be very difficult to break her belief. She will certainly put forward very difficult conditions, so you have to be mentally prepared. Heaven sneered. Yes, my conditions are as difficult as ascending to heaven for a man. But don't worry, I won't deliberately make things difficult for you with irrelevant problems, because that would be tantamount to declaring that I have no confidence in my own persistence. I see. Then I have no more questions. Just bring it on. As soon as Wang Lu's voice fell, his complexion changed. Because in front of him, there were suddenly a few more figures, and each of them looked very familiar. Zhu Shiyao, Lu Li, Lady Boss, Bai Shixian, Yu Xinyao, Cat Girl Ling Yan. Each of them was in a trance as if they had fallen into an illusion. Just when Wang Lu thought that heaven was going to threaten him with hostages, he saw the last person. It was his master, who was waving at him. What are you doing here? The others were fine. They were originally taking refuge in Moon Capital in Tavern Heaven on Earth and tried to complete the mission by farming chaotic monsters. So it was not surprising that they could be captured by Heaven at any time. But what was Wang Wu doing here? Wang Lu did not believe that she would be captured by Heaven. She might not be able to defeat Heaven, but she definitely had the ability to protect herself. Haha, I'm here to help. Wang Wu giggled. Just now, Heaven separated a trace of primordial spirit to communicate with me and told me about her plan. I thought it was very interesting, so I came to cooperate. You're really... Wang Lu was so angry that he could not speak. Looking at Wang Wu's expression as if she was watching a good show, he almost broke his teeth from gritting them. Darling, don't be angry, moi. Moi my ass. You're already so old and you're still trying to act cute? Don't you have any shame? Wang Lu's primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi immediately brewed in his hand. But at the same time, Heaven let out a sneer. Vulgar and rude words to women, blindly using violence to oppress people. Humph, this is indeed the style of you men. Wang Lu turned his head to look at Heaven and said coldly, Believe me, you'll regret putting that guy in your female camp. With that, he let out a long sigh. What conditions do you have? Just say it. It's very simple. Next, as long as you don't hurt anyone here, I'll let you pass. Don't hurt anyone here? Wang Lu frowned, thinking, what kind of condition is this? Not to mention Lu Li and Bai Shixian, these well-behaved children, even if it was his big senior sister and the dumb cat who he had a shallow relationship with, he would not hurt them for no reason. Or would Heaven manipulate them to attack him, in order to test his tolerance for women? That didn't matter. With his non-phase sword defense, these people together would not be his opponent. Wait a minute. Among these people, there seemed to be a person whom he could not wait to kill right now. Others were fine, but for Wang Wu, this peerless slut, it was really difficult to restrain himself from hurting her. This Heaven had really put forward a tricky condition. However, since he had already come this far, how could he back down? Okay, then let's begin. When Wang Lu finished speaking, he saw heaven and the source of chaos looked at each other and exchanged the terms of the bet. Then, the pale world in front of him suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a broken scene. The fragments of the scene were glued together at a very fast speed. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lu was already in a magnificent palace. He sat on a large bed. The red and white robe that he usually wore was replaced by a pure white exquisite pajamas. Beside the bed, a delicate girl was presenting a plate. On the plate were several wooden signs, on which were the names of Lu Li and the others. Then, Wang Lu heard a sentence that made his hair stand on end. Your Majesty, whose sign are you going to flip tonight? Chapter 580. Wang Lu hadn't felt such a strong sense of fear for a long time. Long before he climbed the Spirit Sword Mountain to seek immortality, in the Wang family village, he was already famous for being fearless. The word fear seemed to be insulated from him. At any time, he would always have a well-thought-out plan. So much so that after more than 20 years of his debut and countless miraculous achievements, some people began to have superstition about him, as if he was really omnipotent and fearless. In fact, this was simply nonsense. Fear was the instinctive reaction of creatures to seek benefits and avoid harm. Except for those with incomplete brain structure, who could be fearless. Moreover, one of the most important qualities on the road of immortal cultivation was fear. Fear the heaven and earth, fear the great Tao, and fear the words of the sages. The truly fearless people were those who were possessed by the devil. Therefore, Wang Lu only felt justified in his current strong fear. If it was anyone else, seeing the plate with the name Wang Wu on it, perhaps they would be frightened. Your Majesty, whose card are you going to flip today? The delicate maid asked in a hurried manner. Wang Lu was silent. He didn't want to flip the plate now, he just wanted to flip the plate. This heaven's bad taste could be called vicious. The dignified Dixian actually made this kind of palace fight theme story. However, judging from her twisted and split personality, perhaps she really experienced a palace fight and then became a loser. Thus, in her extremely lost heart, two thoughts sprouted. One was that all the men in the world were not good things. This was because of the resentment of falling out of favor. The other was that all the women in the world were not good things. This was an unforgettable hatred for her peers. However, the love story of Dixian was not the focus. Right now, he had to take care of his own business. Right now, he was in a strange place. Everything around him was like a dream, fake, and real. The rules of this gambling fight were not clear enough. For example, how long was the time limit to not hurt anyone? What was the definition of hurt? These were not clear. Then the first thing to do. Wang Lu looked up and said to the maid, "Help me call all the concubines here. I want to hold a special meeting to discuss it." What? The maid looked at Wang Lu incredulously. All the concubines? Yes, call all of them. This is against the rules. In the harem, there can only be one consort at a time. You're comparing me to those mediocre people. One concubine isn't enough. I'm big and I can fight 10 at once. Your Majesty, you can't do that. The maid anxiously advised. How can you have such a ridiculous idea? This will cause chaos in the harem. I like messy ones. It's okay. The maid knelt on the ground with a thud. Your Majesty, you mustn't. Seeing that the little girl was determined, Wang Lu frowned and decided not to force her. Then, he tried to use his primordial spirit to call out to her, but found that many immortal spells were useless in this palace. Therefore, he realized that heaven had intentionally cut off his connection with the others when he designed the scene. That's right, they're all from the same family. If they colluded to put on a show, wouldn't this bet be a sure win? In that case, it was probably impossible for them to sleep together. After a long time, Wang Lu summoned the kneeling maid and softly asked, "In your opinion?" Upon hearing this, the maid was startled and somewhat incredulously looked at Wang Lu. Your Majesty, how could it be my turn to express my opinion on this kind of thing? This maid is ignorant, if I say something wrong. It's okay, just think of it as eliminating the wrong answer for me. Tell me first. The maid suddenly looked embarrassed as if she was about to cry, and her arm that was holding the plate trembled. Wang Lu scanned her with his primordial spirit and found that she was just a little cultivator with a cultivation base of foundation establishment stage. No wonder she couldn't resist his gaze. However, since she could personally serve the emperor, how could her status be low? Therefore he continued to ask, "In your opinion, what if I choose this card?" Wang Lu pointed to Lu Li's card. The maid froze for a moment, wanting to say something but hesitated. "If you have something to say it, or I'll flip your card." As he spoke, Wang Lu deliberately licked his lips with his tongue and rolled up his sleeves, scaring the maid so much that her face turned pale. Your Majesty's choice of Lady Lu Li is naturally excellent. And then? Wang Lu could tell that she hadn't finished her sentence. But you've already flipped Consort Lu Li's card many times recently. If you continue, this servant is worried that the other consorts will have something to say. Wang Lu's heart skipped a beat. Had she flipped Xiao Liuli's card many times recently? I don't have any recollection of it. Although he knew that this was just a background setting given by the heavens, there was a subtle hint of an emerald crown in this setting. However, from another point of view, this setting was reasonable. If there really was such a harem, Lu Li must be one of the most popular concubines. Figure and appearance were secondary. In terms of appearance, Zhu Shiyao by Xueqi, and even the silent Wang Wu, none of them lost to her. However, Lu Li's character was too inexplicable. Naive, well-behaved, and clingy, a perfect harem concubine. If there really was such a harem, Wang Lu asked himself, he would flip Xiao Liuli's card every day until it was rotten. However, on the other hand, as the saying goes, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Lu Li's exclusive favor in the harem would inevitably become the target of public criticism. Moreover, even without considering the harem infighting, just by looking at the condition given by the heavens, not to hurt any of the girls, it was impossible to let one person exclusive favor, because it would inevitably make other people fall out of favor and be hurt. Wait a minute, there seemed to be something wrong with this logic. The setting of this scene by the heavens implied an important premise. Those who were set as concubines by her must have feelings for him, only then would this setting be meaningful. The problem was that this was not in line with reality at all. Well, Yu Xinyao was certainly an exception. He didn't know what was wrong with this child, but after several contacts more than 10 years ago, she had a deep love for him. Fatty Wen's efforts for so long still couldn't change her mind. Of course, this matter was purely the fatty seeking his own death. In the beginning, he enthusiastically attacked, plus he really didn't have any other thoughts about Yu Xinyao, so Yu Xinyao's attitude was vaguely loosened. If the fatty took advantage of this situation to pursue her, he would have a great chance to take her down, but as a result, the fatty worked hard and easily took down the great Ming country's Miss Li Nana. Moreover, he achieved the shocking achievement of getting pregnant before marriage. Since then, he indeed lived a blissful sexual life, but he also completely lost his future with Yu Xinyao. In addition to Yu Xinyao, Wang Wu could barely be regarded as an example. Although the relationship between the two had a comical trend, it was difficult to sort out the 100 years of love between the past and present life. But apart from these two, Wang Lu really didn't think that there was anyone else who would care about his love. Little Lu Li had indeed always been very close to him, but to say that the love between a man and a woman seemed to be a bit lacking. Bai Xueqian, as the descendant of the Grand Cloud Fairy, had an inextricable fate with him, but it was difficult to classify it as a love between a man and a woman. In addition, the lady boss and the cat girl Ling Yan only had a friendship, not a love affair. As for big martial sister Zhu Shiyao, even their friendship was relatively shallow. Under this premise, it didn't matter even if he didn't touch those people's cards for 10,000 years. The key point of this test seemed to be a problem from the beginning. Thinking of this, Wang Lu tentatively asked, as far as I know, Zhu Shiyao has always been focused on swordsmanship, so she shouldn't care, right? The maid carefully replied, Zhu Nyongyang's character is indeed indifferent, and she doesn't easily associate with others, but Zhu Nyongyang's desire for your Majesty's favor is no weaker than anyone else's. Wang Lu thought, isn't this nonsense? With Zhu Shiyao's temperament, whose favor would she care about? Right now, it was only her master, sect head Feng Yin's words that were more useful. If he was a true immortal of swordsmanship, then so be it. As long as he could teach her an unprecedented set of divine swordsmanship, She certainly wouldn't mind selling her own body, even if she was played with by others in all kinds of ways. But the problem was, purely in terms of swordsmanship, Xueqi was still above him. Seeing that Wang Lu didn't believe her, the maid hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, please don't doubt Zhu Nyongyong's true feelings for you. She entrusted her swordsmanship to you because she was usually lonely in her boudoir. In Zhu Nyongyong's heart, there is absolutely no one more important than your Majesty." Wang Lu's teeth were about to fall off when he heard this, but on second thought, this kind of setting was actually more in line with the needs of the game. The problem was, this was equivalent to Zhu Shiyao's worldview being forcefully changed and her brain being forcefully washed. This might not be a good thing for a cultivator's primordial spirit. "Then the others are the same?" the maid boldly replied. "Although each of the consorts has a different temperament, their true feelings for you are definitely not false." "Is it the same for Wang Wu? She has gone through thick and thin with you for many years, and their relationship is the deepest. Why do you doubt her?" After hearing this, Wang Lu fell silent again, but very quickly, an idea flashed through his mind. "Through thick and thin with her for many years?" Take out the records of me flipping the tiles in the past for reference. Since this setting had a long history, then it would be safe as long as he followed the records of flipping tiles in the past few years. The maid said in surprise, "Now that the Imperial Harem has just been built, the system of flipping tiles has only been implemented a few days ago. These days, you've been flipping consort Lu Li's tiles, so why would you need any records?" TSK, as expected of Dixian, he's really meticulous in doing things, not giving people any chance to play tricks. If that's the case, then there's no other way. Wang Lu shook his head, reached into the plate, and lifted up a wooden tile. The maid looked at the tile and smiled slightly. "I'll go call Consort Wu now." Chapter 581. "Ha ha ha, little Lulu, I'm here to play with you." Before the person arrived, the laughter came first, and a cheerful atmosphere hit him like a wave of heat. However, when Wang Lu heard the laughter, he felt a throbbing pain in his heart, and he felt like he could die at any time. He didn't flip over Wang Wu's sign to have sex with her. Now that he was in a scene set by heaven, no matter how elegant Wang Lu was, he couldn't do it in front of others. He looked for Wang Wu to discuss countermeasures. Although his solo ability as a professional adventurer was heaven-defying, the current problem wasn't something that could be solved by one person, especially in the face of too many unknown factors. Wang Lu naturally thought of asking for help from his teammates. Although Wang Lu didn't want to admit it, there was no doubt that Wang Wu was the most trustworthy among them. Whether it was strength or intelligence, she was the best. However, when he heard the laughter full of schadenfreude, Wang Lu felt that he had chosen the wrong person. Wang Wu might be smart and strong enough, but when she was playing tricks on him, her intelligence and strength would add fuel to the fire. And right now, she looked like she was playing tricks on him. So when Wang Wu jumped into the room happily, Wang Lu could only look at her with an incomparably conflicted gaze, and then he tried to suppress the surging regret in his heart. "Who asked you to be impulsive, to flip over her sign? If you flip it again, I'll chop off my hand." Before he could speak, he heard Wang Wu laugh and say, "Haha, why do you have such a withered face the moment we meet? Could it be that you can't do it at such a young age? That's really tragic. Why don't you switch from attacking to receiving, and enjoy a different kind of pleasure?" Wang Lu was silent for a long time, and then he resolutely raised his middle finger at her. "Haha, are you using this finger to hint at the size? F***CK. If you talk nonsense again, I'll burn your sign, confiscate all the sticks in your palace, and prohibit you from providing cucumbers, eggplants, and other vegetables. You won't be satisfied for the rest of your life." "Okay, let's get down to business." Seeing how fierce Wang Lu's retaliation against the flirting tactic was, Wang Wu shrugged and stopped smiling. At the same time, Wang Lu's anger dissipated and he asked, "What do you think of the current situation?" "How else can I look at it?" Wang Wu said as she walked closer and opened her palm. "Let's not talk about anything else. Give me the red heart first." Wang Lu was stunned. "What heart? You don't know? Is there no one to explain it to you?" Wang Wu was also curious. "It's the red heart that symbolizes the favor of the harem. You should have 3 of them now." Wang Lu was stunned for a moment. He turned around and took out 3 heart-shaped rubies from the pillow beside the bed. "You mean these?" "That's right. Give them all to me." Wang Wu reached out and wanted to take them, but Wang Lu naturally wouldn't give it to her. First, tell me what these are. You're really troublesome. Don't you understand the function of these things? Each one symbolizes the favor of the harem. It's a necessity for the harem concubines. A necessity? Wang Lu carefully observed the ruby in his hand. He felt that it seemed to contain some mysterious power. If he could analyze it, I advise you not to try it. That gem is a Dixian trick. It's not that easy to crack. It will only bring you unnecessary trouble. Wang Wu warned sternly. Then she explained, simply put, the rules of this game revolve around the ruby. As the concubines, we have to consume 1 ruby every day. If we don't, we will be punished. If we accumulate 3 days of punishment, we will be eliminated. Wait, including you, there are 7 people playing the role of the harem. That means we have to consume 7 rubies every day. But I only have 3 gems here. That's right, only 3, and only 3 will be automatically generated every day. That's the problem. Wang Wu said, not only that, but what's more troublesome is that for us, 1 gem is only the lowest consumption. If we want to end this game, we have to accumulate 3 gems on our own. 1 for each person isn't even enough. How can we accumulate it? Wang Lu frowned. He gradually figured out the difficulty of this round. This Dixian was really vicious. He suddenly gave them a completely unsolvable problem. Moreover, the problem was open and above board. It was obvious that he was making things difficult for them. Anyone with basic mathematical ability could calculate that no matter how they planned, the ruby was definitely not enough. The happiness of a few was bound to be built on the pain of the majority. Based on the calculation of sending 1 person away with 3 gems, even without considering the daily consumption, all 7 of them would need 21 gems. This was Wang Lu's weekly output. This meant that the last person to leave would have to suffer for 6 days. Needless to say, it was not feasible. This problem is really a pain in the ass. Wang Lu sighed. The design of the harem is to value men over women. The emperor of the world has 3,000 beauties in his harem, but some of them can't get the emperor's love in their entire lives. This is an unsolvable problem. What's more, the harem has always been sinister. There are no good men or women. Only she could think of finding the beauty of love between men and women here. Is that so? I don't think her logic is difficult to understand. Wang Wu said, for you men, the highest ideal in life is nothing more than to be a king. The mortal world has a mortal emperor, and the cultivators have a cultivator leader. Even in the immortal land of the upper realm, there are most likely immortal kings and immortal emperors. So, arranging for you to be an emperor is to make you the best man in the world. If even the best man can't prove that he is a good thing, then naturally there are no good men in the world. This logic is also powerful. Because this logic is not wrong. Wang Wu laughed. You think that the body of an emperor has too many beauties in the harem, and it is difficult to coordinate. If it were a disabled person who was born with a mental disability, he would indeed not have to worry about the affairs between men and women for the rest of his life, nor would he hurt the hearts of any girls because of it. But is it possible that a mentally disabled person is a good man? Ha ha. Wang Lu could not help but laugh. So that's how it is. That makes sense. I think that the Dixian girl fell in love with a hero, or at least in her opinion, a heroic emperor. Unfortunately, her heart was broken by that person, so she thought that even the great hero she loved could hurt her, let alone other men. With that, Wang Lu's smile faded. Unfortunately, it's meaningless to understand this. Right now, the problem can't be solved. The number of rubies is definitely not enough. Not even half of the daily consumption. Wang Wu said, that's right, but as the saying goes, it's better to break 1 finger than to injure 10 fingers. Since it's impossible to divide evenly, why don't you give me all 3 gems in exchange for my freedom? What do you think? Hee. Wang Lu gave a very sincere answer. Wang Wu sighed. To be honest, there's really no good way. I woke up earlier than you guys in this world, so I have seen the layout here in advance. Dixian's means are extraordinary, so it's very difficult to use tricks. What about using non-phase method to meet force with force? It's best not to try. Although that Dixian said that it doesn't matter what trick you use, it only means that she doesn't mind if you cheat on the gambling table. But if you use force to solve it, that's the same as flipping the table. And you and I are not qualified to flip the table of a Dixian. Don't forget, there are more than 2 of us at the table. TSK so troublesome. Wang Lu frowned and fell into contemplation. Wang Wu didn't speak, nor did she disturb him. She just kept looking at the gem in Wang Lu's hand, as if planning when to snatch it. After an unknown period of time, Wang Lu suddenly opened his mouth. Actually, this matter boils down to a problem of increasing income and reducing expenditure. I haven't thought about how to reduce expenditure, so I might as well do something from the source of income. For example, Wang Lu said, clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He then took out a pink porcelain bottle from his mustard seed bag, poured out 2 blue pills, and swallowed them. The next moment, Wang Lu felt as if a fire was ignited in his body. It was not an ordinary fire, but a demonic fire that could make people's blood boil and reason hazy. After this flame entered his mouth, it hovered in his stomach for a moment, then quickly turned down and gradually concentrated in the lower abdomen. Soon, Wang Lu was glad that he had changed into a loose robe before summoning Wang Wu. Right now, with the correct sitting posture, he barely covered his sky pillar, so as not to make a fool of himself. It was just that, even the non-phase golden body couldn't suppress his flushed face. How could he hide it from Wang Wu? Little Lu, you're not really going to fail at such a young age, are you? You actually have to rely on drugs to maintain your dignity? However, from the angle of your current body and the angle of the cover of the robe, your capital is quite good. Before she finished speaking, she widened her eyes and looked incredulously at the ruby next to Wang Lu's pillow. This is also possible? Wang Lu breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough. Although the design of the rules of this world is absurd, in fact, every detail has its own meaning and the possibility of further extension. For example, this ruby, since it symbolizes the emperor's favor, then if the emperor can dig deeper into his own potential and divide more love, there should be more gems formed. In fact, I suspect that this is the real intention of Dixian to design this scene. Oh. Wang Lu sneered and said, she wants to know if I, Wang, have the ability to dig out enough potential to give happiness to every woman. Hey, she really underestimated me. If there were really 3,000 beauties in the harem, I might be helpless, but it's just 7 people, it's not even worth mentioning. Wang Lu said passionately, then wiped away the blood that kept gushing out of his nose, and poured all the pills in the pink porcelain bottle into his mouth. The next moment, a fountain of blood shot up into the sky, and Wang Lu fell backward. Before fainting, he vaguely saw a red light flashing next to his pillow. Haha, it really worked. Chapter 582. When he woke up, Wang Lu found that he was still in that damned palace, and in front of him was that face that made people feel pain in the ass. How come it's you? Wang Wu said angrily. Who else could it be? Do you really think you're an emperor and expect a group of maids to serve you? They're just a group of background characters who can't even explain the rules of the game to you. Apart from me, the master who raised you, who else do you expect to wipe the blood from your nose at the critical moment? With that, Wang Wu flung her hand and threw a piece of blood-stained rag into the bucket. Wang Lu frowned. From the color of the rag, he felt that the amount of blood was a bit too much. The entire bucket was dyed red. And with Sister Wu's usual integrity, it was hard to say that she didn't forge it with some kind of method to prove how conscientiously she served him. Maybe it was just her leftover feminine products. But now was not the time to care about these trivial matters. Where are the rubies? Gone. Wang Wu shrugged. Gone. How come? Although Wang Lu's first reaction was that Wang Wu ate all the rubies, logically speaking, there were about 10 rubies that appeared beside the pillow at the last moment. There was no need for Wang Wu to swallow all the rubies. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that she hoarded them and sold them to Zhu Shiyao and the others at a high price. But for the sake of their relationship, he didn't think too much of her and listened to her explanation first. However, Wang Wu only looked at Wang Lu coldly and said, I guess you must be suspecting that I stole the rubies and hoarded them. Wang Lu sighed. If it were you, wouldn't you be suspicious? Humph, I did want to take a few rubies to play with, but as soon as I stretched out my hand, those rubies disappeared. Disappeared? That's right, but I'm not surprised. In fact, from the moment those gems were formed, I could tell that they were very unstable. Not only were there many flaws in their structure, but their luster was also unstable. Wang Wu sighed and said with some regret. It seems that opportunistic is not the right way after all. However, this actually makes sense. The ruby symbolizes your love for your concubine, and this kind of love should emphasize sincerity rather than sensual desire. When you first took the aphrodisiac to tap your potential, it could be understood as sacrificing yourself to satisfy others, which was a noble act. However, later on, when you ate the aphrodisiac as if it was a meal, it was completely opportunistic. By extension, it could be classified as sensual desire, and it could not be counted. Wang Lu frowned. He felt that this made sense. However, many of his plans could not be carried out in this way. Actually, I'm quite curious as to why you chose to take medicine just now. Wang Wu said, if you think that being pampered is equivalent to being blessed, and the current problem is that you don't have enough capital, then you should make full use of the power of props. You can go to the kitchen and get a few cucumbers. Wouldn't you get as many gems as you want? Isn't that nonsense? The cucumbers are too insincere. Wang Wu sneered. That's because the way you use it is wrong. You're a sword cultivator. What do you think the immortal sword cultivator is? Ha ha ha, I want to ask you, what do you think the immortal sword cultivator is? You know, my non-phase sword has more than 110 layers of heaven, but you only... Enough, this topic ends here. Wang Lu quickly stopped this wave of insulting the dignity of the immortal path. Wang Wu smiled and then sighed with emotion. In short, since you can't solve the problem by taking medicine, it seems that there's really no chance. The rules of this game are watertight. I think you should just admit defeat. Wang Lu shook his head. Of course, he didn't want to admit defeat. Not to mention whether Dixian could accept it or not, Wang Lu himself never had the habit of running away halfway. However, the rules of this game were really a pain in the ass. 3 hearts, 7 women, and no tricks were allowed. This was simply an unsolvable problem. However, on second thought, an idea flashed through Wang Lu's mind. This rule of having to pay with sincerity and no tricks was actually secretly providing an opportunity. If rubies don't count for whether or not I'm sincere, does that mean that I can think of things the other way around? The so-called rubies are just the general equivalent of the act of spoiling. When the number of rubies is insufficient, I can use my true feelings as a substitute. If I pay enough sincerity to Lioli and the others, and they can also get happiness from it, can they also meet the conditions of clearing the game? The more Wang Lu thought about it, the more reasonable it was. It should be like this. The setting of the rubies is very abrupt. Isn't it ridiculous to use the rubies to replace the human heart? In the end, what Dixian values is the human heart. The setting of these 3 rubies seems to be a convenient prop to reduce the difficulty of the game. When you really can't pay your sincerity to someone, you can use the rubies instead. Well, if that's the case, it seems to make sense in theory. The rubies in this world should just be a symbol, a substitute. The rules I learned about the rubies are only part of the rules of the whole world. But, Wang Wu said, her face became very complicated. Paying your sincerity to 7 girls at the same time, you've really taken a big step on the road of scum. I don't remember teaching a playboy disciple. Wang Lu sneered in his heart. You have the cheek to say that, a man of wine, women, avarice and temper. But on the other hand, he showed a deep expression and said to Wang Wu softly, with others, it's just a game. You and I have been together for 100 years. It's fate, a match made in heaven. You should know that deep in my heart, you are the only one. F***CK. Wang Wu screamed and directly jumped away from the head of the bed like a catapult. Her back heavily hit the wall of the palace, causing the dust to rustle down. Then, she looked like she was in so much pain that she wanted to die. Her 10 fingers kept scratching her 2 arms, and she kept moaning. It's so uncomfortable. I feel like my bones are aching and itching. Wang Lu slammed the bed angrily. What kind of attitude is that? Who told you to say such disgusting words first? And you were so close to me, I feel like someone poured feces on my face. Is that so? Then listen to me again. Your eyes are like the stars in the night sky, forever in my heart. I've been wandering in another world for 100 years. Every time I look up at the stars, I'll think of your eyes and your gentleness. Shut up, shut up. Wang Wu couldn't stand still. She used her hands to cover her ears and screamed. My love for you is as eternal as the Kunlun Mountains, as endless as the endless sea. Wang Wu immediately rolled on the ground. Help! My traitorous disciple is killing me. Seeing that the other party had even used the trick of rolling on the ground, Wang Lu finally couldn't go on. He really couldn't win this battle of shamelessness. After a while, Wang Wu got up wearily. I'm really scared of you. What you said just now made me want to die. Wang Lu was still a little unwilling. Don't you have any resonance in your heart? The resonance you said is similar to the resonance of a heart attack? Then my resonance just now was really big. Alas, the blue sea turns into mulberry fields. Wang Lu couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In the past 100 years, Wang Wu's changes were really too great. If it was 150 years ago, if the big brother she admired could say such words to her, she would have cried tears of joy. But now she was rolling on the ground, afraid to hear another word. To tell you the truth, doting this thing should be different from person to person. Wang Wu explained with a lingering fear. Wang Lu, of course, knew this truth. He just didn't expect that Wang Wu was actually not interested in his words of love at all. If Yu Xinyao heard those words just now, the young girl probably wouldn't wash her ears for a year. If that's the case, then I won't be unreasonable. My true doting is here, if you want it, then take it. After Wang Lu finished speaking, he took out a high-grade mysterious sky crystal from his mustard seed bag. The next moment, two burning eyes locked onto it. Wang Wu's expression changed from awe to shock, from shock to emotion, and finally, tears filled her eyes. This for me? And it's for you. Wang Wu took the mysterious sky crystal with trembling hands, and the moment the crystal was in her hand, a clear ruby also fell into her palm. Damn, it really works. Wang Lu had nothing to say about this. In the end, was the world created by Dixian too wonderful, or was it Wang Wu who was too wonderful? However, it was better to solve the problem with money than to solve the problem with the body. Unfortunately, the only one who could solve the problem in this way was probably Wang Wu. Moreover, he was very suspicious that the reason why Wang Wu could be settled with money so easily was because of the ill-fated relationship between the two of them. If it were someone else, perhaps it wouldn't be so easy. While thinking about it, he heard Wang Wu's urging in his ear. Hey, you still need 2 mysterious sky crystals, give them to me together. Give your sister. Are you going to leave us, the younger generation disciples, and walk away alone? Let me tell you, there's no way. Just be a good girl and stick to the end. Before everyone is gone, you will never be able to leave. Huh? Are you serious? Okay, you go first. I'm going to prepare to dote on other people. Wang Lu very simply and decisively waved Wang Wu away, and began to prepare for the next person's doting problem. According to the previous maid, the emperor couldn't turn over more than 1 card at a time, so he could only solve the problem step by step. The best order was from easy to difficult, starting from the simple. In the end, if he really couldn't pay sincerely to make her happy, he would take out the 3 universal rubies and increase her happiness. So the next candidate, come, call Luli for me. Chapter 583. Senior brother, are you looking for me? Not long after Wang Lu issued the order, the charming girl came to the outside of the bedroom with a curious face. Senior brother, what is this place? It feels so strange. Shouldn't we be in Moon Capital? Wang Lu sighed. It's a long story. Since we're already here, let's just take things as they come. By the way, I have a few pieces of pastries for you to eat. Luli nodded her head vigorously and took the pastries. Her happy smile was pure and innocent, and then she swallowed half of the box of pastries in one gulp. In front of Wang Lu, Luli had always been very relaxed and casual. Her table manners, which had been corrected many times by Zhou Ming, also reverted to her old ways. The cake residue stained the girl's face, but Wang Lu only looked at it with interest. If this child could solve the problem, it would be the best. However, even after Luli had eaten the whole box of pastries, the expected ruby did not come. Wang Lu touched his chin and fell into contemplation. It seemed like it was not that easy to get happiness. From the point of satisfaction, the satisfaction that Luli got from eating the box of royal-grade pastries and Wang Wu's mysterious sky crystal should be similar. Luli had always been an easily satisfied child. The difference between the two was probably the difference in emotion. Now that he thought about it, Perhaps what really made the ruby come was not the mysterious sky crystal, but when the two of them took over the mysterious sky crystal, the slight touch between their fingers and palms, and at that moment, there were indeed some ripples in their hearts. The previous words of love, no matter how awkward it was for him to say it, no matter how painful it was for Wang Wu to hear it, in the final analysis, it was not a lie, at least not completely. Whenever he thought of the dream of crossing over, thinking of the young, clumsy, but persistent and pitiful girl, Wang Lu always felt that there was something more in his heart, and the weight became heavy. Ouyang Shang did not inherit all of his memories, but some fate could not be severed even after crossing the three realms. However, in contrast to Wang Wu, when facing Lu Li, it was difficult for Wang Lu to have any romantic thoughts. It was true that she had big breasts, long legs, and a beautiful face, but Wang Lu, after all, was not an orangutan in heat, so seeing a beautiful person would make him impulsive. Secondly, although he and Lu Li have been together for a long time, and their familiarity with each other has been far better than that of common disciples, it was precisely because they have been together for too long that the mode of their interaction has been fixed, but it was difficult to have a qualitative change. And deep in his heart, Wang Lu did not want to push for any changes in their relationship. The way the two brothers and sisters interacted with each other was just right. Taking a step forward or taking a step back would seem awkward. However, now was not the time to care about the relationship between the two. Even the royal kitchen-level dessert could not be exchanged for Lu Li's heart. Obviously, the opportunistic method was not going to work, then. Was he really going to play for real? But, in the face of such a child, could he do it? Wang Lu frowned and looked at Lu Li. His head was aching. Senior brother, what's wrong? Lu Li curiously tilted her head. Nothing, I'm brewing feelings. Ha! As soon as Lu Li's naive voice came out, the girl felt that there was one more person in front of her, and then a pair of strong arms appeared on her body. While she was stunned, she was embraced by Wang Lu. A senior brother? Lu Li's eyes widened and froze in place, not knowing what to do. Her voice trembled. Did I do something wrong? After a while, Wang Lu released Lu Li. The girl's face has been dyed red, and her body was as soft as cotton. It took all of her strength to support herself. At the same time, a red gem slowly condensed in front of Lu Li. Seeing the appearance of the gem, Wang Lu gently breathed a sigh of relief. His hard work just now was not in vain. Under the situation of a soft and fragrant body, it really took a lot of effort to restrain himself from doing something. And the result? Indeed, in the past, Wang Lu almost never had any fantasies about Lu Li. However, his thinking was affected by the reality. When the two of them were in intimate contact, as long as Wang Lu's function was still sound enough and his nature was not completely extinguished, his heart would naturally have the thought of loving and spoiling her. Thus, the ruby came out. Lu Li, collect the gem. Although the method was somewhat utilitarian, since the result was good, then everything was good. He just had to follow the prescription and do it a few more times. Then, Wang Lu hugged Lu Li again and got another gem. At this time, Lu Li could no longer stand steadily and softly fell to the ground. Thereupon, Wang Lu picked her up and finally gently touched her forehead with his lips. With a cry, Lu Li's whole body trembled, but at the same time, she had already gathered the 3 gems in her hand. With the 3 gems in her hand, Lu Li was directly expelled from this world. The girl in Wang Lu's arms was nowhere to be seen. Phew, the first one is finally done. Using water element spell, he gathered a basin of bone-chilling cold mysterious water and sprinkled it on his head. Wang Lu cooled down the restlessness in his heart and began to prepare for the next concubine. Someone, call Yu Xinyao here. To some extent, Yu Xinyao was easier to deal with than Lu Li. Lu Li was actually very ignorant about feelings. Although she had been very close to Wang Lu all these years, it was only out of instinct. If it weren't for Wang Lu's exceptional behavior today, perhaps it would take many years for her to realize that she had an extraordinary feeling for Wang Lu. However, Yu Xinyao had already made her own idea clear many years ago. The problem was only Wang Lu's reaction. And how could a professional adventurer not know what he should do? After 2 hugs and a kiss on the forehead, Wang Lu smoothly sent off Yu Xinyao. However, unlike Lu Li, after sending off Yu Xinyao, Wang Lu always felt that his heart began to become a bit heavy, as if there were more shackles. It seems like I'm not a natural scum after all. Having a harem would give me psychological pressure. Regardless of what those girls thought of him, If he wanted to successfully condense the hearts, Wang Lu himself must be truly moved. Opportunistic tricks would not be able to get away with it. However, if he was moved too much, it would be a burden. Even Wang Lu couldn't avoid this. Fortunately, there are 3 rubies as support, otherwise, this would be really difficult. While thinking, Wang Lu called the next person in. Bai Shixian, come here. The meeting with Little White ended faster than Yu Xinyao, and the process was somewhat dreamlike. Because when Bai Shixian came in, Wang Lu didn't see the familiar and quiet girl, but instead saw a woman deep in his memory. Grand Cloud? Grand Cloud Fairy, who once dreamed for 1,000 years in the Green Lake, carried a unique memory. When they met again, he couldn't help but sigh. Although he knew that this was mostly just an illusion, Wang Lu still unconsciously appreciated the peerless beauty of Grand Cloud Fairy. The dream was very short. Before long, the figure of Grand Cloud Fairy disappeared, and together with Bai Shixian, they were sent out of this harem world. Just a dream meeting can satisfy the conditions. Is this a kind of dream? With a bit of self-deprecation, Wang Lu called the next candidate. Cat girl, come here. Wang Lu has always been curious why even this stupid cat demon could be selected by Dixian to enter this harem world. The other girls, more or less, had some possibility of developing an ambiguous relationship with him. Only this cat girl, Wang Lu really had no interest in her. It was not because this cat girl who came from Beastmaster School had long been trained into a used shoe, nor was it because he had any discrimination against monsters and the like. More than half of the reason was that the cat girl always had a trace of hostility toward Wang Lu. Of course, because of her identity and status, even if the cat girl was hostile, she didn't dare to take action. However, since she didn't like him, Wang Lu didn't need to like her. Since the end of the Grand Cloud trip and after he brought the cat girl back to Spirit Sword Mountain, Wang Lu rarely dealt with her. Until today. To deal with the cat girl, although Wang Lu found it troublesome, he also had a way. To dote on the cat girl, he could start with the simplest lust. Although he had no feelings for her, objectively speaking, the cat girl still had the charm of a female creature. Especially after being seriously developed by the professional trainer of Beastmaster School, the temptation of her body was extraordinary. As for how to let the cat girl put down her hostility and accept all of this with peace of mind. Here, these 2 are for you. Wang Lu easily solved the problem with 2 of Lu Li's underwear. Since the last Grand Cloud trip, Wang Lu found that the cat girl was very attached to the 2 people, especially Lu Li, and even regarded herself as a loyal guard, although Lu Li didn't need it at all. Therefore, it could be assumed that she conspired against the 2 people. As a result, he used the underwear to bait her, and sure enough, she took the bait. As for the source of the underwear, previously, when he hugged little Lu Li, Wang Lu took it away a little bit. And that was why he put Lu Li in the first place. Her clothes had a very important role. After gaining the cat girl's favor, after a few hugs and caresses, the gems were successfully condensed. After dealing with the cat girl, Wang Lu found Zhu Shiyao. How to give favor to this cold big sister was indeed a problem. But fortunately, Zhu Shiyao was not an ordinary person. After Wang Lu found her, he didn't say much nonsense and immediately sent out a primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. Although it wasn't an all-out attack, it was already an attack that was difficult to resist for ordinary king pill cultivators. However, Zhu Shiyao easily used her finger as a sword, and the Great Sun Golden Brilliant Sword easily broke the primal chaos sword chi. However, after this sword strike, Zhu Shiyao gradually showed an incredible look, and soon, a trace of redness appeared on her face. She looked very excited. Wang Lu smiled as soon as he saw this. Big Sister was indeed Big Sister. Her degree of sword fanaticism was far higher than that of her peers. This primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi contained all of Wang Lu's understanding after the emergency king pill. Compared with the original version, it was quite different. Although it couldn't be said to be better than the version of Bailey Sword Demon, the details were undoubtedly more suitable for Wang Lu to play, and the attributes and changes of the sword chi were also very valuable. For Zhu Shiyao, the value of this sword strike was no less than that of the mysterious sky crystal for Wang Wu. As for the favorability, it was not a big problem. After all, Zhu Shiyao was a beauty with impeccable appearance. Wang Lu resisted the increasingly heavy burden in his heart. While Zhu Shiyao was immersed in the aftertaste of the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi, unable to extricate herself, he touched her face. his eyes sweeping up and down the attractive curves of her body, forcing himself to have fantasies. So, although the quality was quite lacking, he still got 3 rubies. The last person was the lady boss's turn. When he saw Feng Ling without saying anything, Wang Lu directly gave her the first 3 rubies. Hey, what do you mean by this? Feng Ling was still completely puzzled. Good buddy, don't ask why. With our friendship, do you still care about a few gems? That's true. Feng Ling nodded, and then before she could say more, she was directly transmitted out of the harem with a face full of amazement. Wang Lu was greatly relieved. It was not that he was dissatisfied with the lady boss. In fact, when it came to friendship, the friendship between the two of them was the deepest. As early as before they climbed the Spirit Sword Mountain, the two had already established a deep revolutionary friendship in the inn. However, after many years of great friendship, coupled with the forthright temperament of the lady boss, Wang Lu had always regarded her as a brother. In addition, just now he had dealt with 5 people in succession. Plus Wang Wu, that was 6 people. Wang Lu's inner world had long been overwhelmed, and the burden of stepping on multiple boats almost dragged down his non-phase immortal heart. Therefore, if Wang Lu wanted to have evil thoughts in his heart again, the difficulty was really too high. Overall, the progress was far better than expected. At first, he thought that as long as there were 3 people left, relying on the new gems that were produced every day, he could steadily pass this round. However, all the way he had actually reached the last step. Then he would solve the problem directly with the gems. Next is the last one. According to the agreement, it's finally your turn, master. As soon as Wang Lu's voice fell, his master's white dress appeared in front of him. However, different from what he expected, there was no expectation on Wang Wu's face. At least not the kind of expectation that Wang Lu was looking forward to. Wang Lu thought that she would be impatient from waiting, wishing that she could get more mysterious sky crystals a step earlier. However, the current Wang Wu looked like she was waiting for a good show to begin. Moreover, the trace of a malicious smile on her face was suspicious no matter how he looked at it. What are you laughing at? I'm not laughing, Wang Wu said, trying very hard to suppress her trembling abdominal muscles. Wang Lu looked at her for a while, but still couldn't guess what she was thinking. However, considering that this person's brain circuit had always been different from ordinary people, there was no need to worry about these details at this time. In short, take your mysterious sky crystals and leave. Do you really want to end this dream of a harem? Wang Wu lightly took the mysterious sky crystal and asked with interest. Then I wish you good luck, ha ha. With a burst of laughter, Wang Wu was finally transported out of the harem. Then, standing alone in the empty and lonely bedroom, Wang Lu couldn't help but frown. I think the game should be over, right? I've already completed your conditions. Next, it's your turn to fulfill your promise. After saying that, Di Xian's voice echoed in the palace. Previously, I made a bet with you. If you can complete this scene without hurting any girls, I'll consider it a pass. Wang Lu said, since you still remember then, you shall see for yourself whether or not you have fulfilled my conditions. After saying that, the palace next to Wang Lu completely disappeared. This was the first time that Wang Lu saw the scene outside the palace. The layout of the scene was very simple. It was a dazzling white. In the vast expanse of whiteness, Lu Li, Yu Xinyao, Bai Shixian, plus Wang Wu, the 7 women formed a circle, standing less than a dozen feet away from him. It was just that, the expressions of these people were very strange. Wang Wu wanted to laugh, but she forced herself to hold it back. The lady boss, with her hands on her hips, shook her head and sighed, seemingly quite regretful. However, these 2 people weren't the main point. The problem was, Lu Li, Yu Xinyao, and the other's eyes were red and swollen, and tears kept flowing down. This was the first time that Wang Lu saw them so sad. Hey, what's wrong with you guys? Wang Lu was full of concern and curiosity, ready to ask about their situation. However, at this time, a light suddenly flashed through his mind. Wait a minute. Previously, Lu Li and the others collected the 3 hearts and were sent out of the palace. Then where were they sent to? Although it seemed that once they were sent out of the harem scene, did they really leave? Or were they arranged to stay outside the palace, clearly observing every scene that happened inside the palace? Hugging Lu Li, hugging Yu Xinyao, hugging the cat girl Ling Yan, meeting with the Grand Cloud Fairy in his dream, as well as some fantasies that arose in the process of getting along with them. All of these scenes fell into their eyes without a single mistake. Although in theory, the latecomers couldn't see what happened before, Wang Lu didn't think that a recording crystal was a complicated technology. At this time, listening to the suppressed sobs of the several girls, there was only one thought in Wang Lu's mind. Am I going to die? Chapter 584. The scene of a group of girls shedding tears made Wang Lu's skin tense up. Wang Lu had a rough idea of why they were crying. Although the kiss and hug just now were full of utilitarian intent, every move was from the heart and affected the heart. Love was a feeling that contained possessiveness. Sharing love with others was not human nature. Wang Lu asked himself. Even the most indifferent person, like Xueqi, would not be happy if she was hugging and kissing a strange man at this time. But if it was Lu Li and the others, seeing him being intimate with someone else, they would naturally be sad. Even if they didn't understand why he was sad. How about it? What else do you have to say? The cold question interrupted his thoughts. Dixian, who insisted on being a woman, floated over. His proud face was a clear contrast to the people sobbing. Seeing this winner's face, Wang Lu was also convinced. It was not because of the other party's scheming, but purely because of the other party's thick face. It was true that he hurt people's hearts by stepping on more than one boat, but the situation just now was out of his control. Every setting of the scenario led him to do so. If he didn't get 3 hearts, he couldn't pass the level. If he didn't give his love, he couldn't get the hearts. So what else could Wang Lu do? Using a kiss on the cheek and a hug to solve the problem was already very humane. If it was someone with a slightly weaker willpower, they would have already rubbed against each other and made love. Thinking of this, even Wang Lu admired his willpower. Moreover, from Wang Lu's original intention, even the kiss on the forehead and the hug were unnecessary. He never thought of having intimate contact with so many girls, at least not in this situation where his freedom was not guaranteed. But if he didn't do this, he couldn't pass the level, and if he didn't pass the level, he couldn't defeat the twisted Dixian. Therefore, Wang Lu had to be selfless and sacrifice himself. Fortunately, the above steps were one-on-one. At the time, Wang Lu thought that the setting was not anti-human to the extreme and gave some leeway. As long as he didn't let other women see him being intimate with others and sent everyone out at once, there would be no problem. However, Dixian's stubbornness or shamelessness was eye-opening. He actually set up another game in the middle. At this point, he really had nothing to say. Her hatred for men had reached the point where she completely ignored reason and logic. She self-directed a good show and then pushed all the blame onto men. As expected of the product of schizophrenia. Saying another word to someone like her would be a waste of time. Nothing to say? Haha, this is what you men are like. You hurt one woman after another, but you don't even apologize or reflect on yourself. You. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu finally could not bear it anymore. In fact, from these 2 sentences, Wang Lu vaguely caught a glimmer of light. This self-proclaimed heavenly Dixian was most likely hurt by a successful and famous man. Although she could understand that the other party had his reasons, emotionally, she was always unwilling and just wanted an apology from the other party. However, she didn't get that apology and finally died of depression. It was not until thousands of years of brewing in the group of immortal tombs that she finally suffered from schizophrenia and became a female supremacist clown. However, even if he understood all this, the anger in Wang Lu's chest would not be extinguished. Damn it, I didn't say anything. But you actually want a foot after giving me an inch? Moreover, it's fine to target me, but don't you think that treating Lu Li and the others as victims is worse than what you said? A man who specializes in hurting people's heart? As for me, I should blame myself for hurting people's heart because of my carelessness. But because of this, how much anger do you, the culprit, have to bear? Perhaps the old saying is true. A shameless person is invincible. Since you are shameless to this point, then I will not be polite. Previously, I always abided by the bottom line in my words and deeds, which led to my hands and feet being tied, and instead, I was trampled on by others. Shamelessness? That was simply displaying slight skill in front of an expert. In 9 regions and 3 realms, except for Wang Wu, no one has the qualification to show shamelessness in front of me. Wang Lu's face was as solemn as water. What a joke! Why should I apologize? A joke suddenly interrupted Dixian's long-winded chatter. You! Dixian did not expect that Wang Lu would dare to boldly contradict him in a defeated situation. For a moment, he was at a loss for words. Why have I hurt so many people? But Wang Lu sneered and interrupted the other side. They are crying tears of joy. What does it have to do with injury? What did you say? I said, they are very happy now. If it weren't for you, this blind trash, clamoring here, it would be a beautiful family scene. You, this slut, keep nagging here. Could it be that you want to be a third party? Dixian angrily glared at him. For a moment, he was at a loss for words. After a long time, he moved to Lu Li's side and pointed at the girl's swollen eyes. Do you want to say that she is happy like this? Of course. She is very happy. Can you believe what you just said? Why not? Men and women are different. The way they express sadness and joy are different. And now, they are expressing joy in their own way. You are also a woman, but you can't see it. Hearing this, Dixian didn't even know how to refute. I know you don't believe it. It's hard to win people's trust with empty words. Today, I will let you know clearly why you lost. Wang Lu let out a long laugh and also walked to the front of Lu Li. With his head held high, he strode with a domineering momentum that was not inferior to Dixian. In terms of strength, Wang Lu was less than 1% of the other side. But when the two stood face to face, their momentum was almost able to compete with each other. Wang Lu knew that this was not because the other side was soft-hearted, but because she was curious about what he was going to say next, so she didn't fully suppress him. At the same time, the source of chaos was also secretly supporting him. However, the key to victory was still his performance. If he couldn't really convince the other side, his momentum at this time was just a bluff. Of course, Wang Lu's confidence in winning was absolute. Lu Li, I ask you, why are you crying? Lu Li looked up at Wang Lu. Her eyes were still red and pitiful. She looked a little wronged, but more than that, she was confused. I don't know. It's just that when I was arranged to be here, looking at senior brother and them, I felt uncomfortable for no reason. Dixian sneered. Listen clearly. Her heart is uncomfortable. Wang Lu ignored her and continued to ask Lu Li. Heart is uncomfortable. Do you hate me, your senior brother? Lu Li gently raised her delicate eyebrows and softly said, No, how could I hate senior brother? It's good that you don't hate me. I have always liked you. Hearing Wang Lu said that she liked him, Lu Li suddenly smiled through her tears. I also like senior brother the most. Humph, sweet words and flowery words to deceive women are really good. Wang Lu continued to pretend that Dixian didn't exist and asked Lu Li, Just now, when I was close to your big sister and the others, you said your heart was uncomfortable. Let me ask you, do you want me to never contact them again? Upon hearing this, Lu Li was stunned. Never contact them again? Yes, don't talk to them, don't see them, don't care about everything that happens to them. Because being close to them makes you uncomfortable, I will never do that again. Do you want that? No, I don't want that. Lu Li sternly said, although Lu Li doesn't know many things, Master has taught me many times that fellow disciples should love each other. Moreover, if I do that, senior brother, you will be sad, right? I know the feeling of sadness, so I don't want you to be sad. Wang Lu's heart couldn't help but be moved. This child is so well behaved that it makes people feel pity for her. It's not in vain that I chose you as the material to prove my point of view. You really didn't disappoint me. Then later on when I'm close to them, I will hide it from you, not letting you know. How about it? Lu Li hesitated for a moment and then shook her head. No, I don't want senior brother to hide it from me. Then when you see me being close to them, what should you do if your heart is uncomfortable? Lu Li brightly smiled. If my heart is uncomfortable, just cry it out. When the time comes, if senior brother can comfort me like this, that would be even better. Wang Lu sighed and then touched her head. His heart was also filled with emotion. Fortunately, the first choice was her. This child's performance was simply perfect. Then, it's my turn to perform. After Wang Lu and Lu Li finished their conversation, he turned his head and looked at Dixian. Did you hear it? Dixian sneered. I heard it clearly. It's nothing more than a despicable man relying on a woman's tolerance to be promiscuous. You're wrong again. I gave her the right to choose. It's her who wants to see me being intimate with other women, it's her who wants me to continue to be friendly with other women, and it's her who chooses to continue to like me and get close to me. Otherwise, she could ignore me, alienate me, and never see me again. Everything is her choice, her love, so the feeling of sadness is naturally her choice. It's her choice to be sad, to cry, because all of this is a way for her to express her love. What's wrong with me saying that she cried tears of joy? You are twisting words and forcing logic. Yes, I took the logic, so the logic is on my side. But your logic was taken away by me, so you have no logic at all. In fact, the relationship between men and women is the coexistence of smiles and tears. If you really despair for a person, your heart will be like dead ashes, and you will never come in contact with him. If a woman knows that she will feel sad and wronged, but she still chooses to be with a man, it can only mean that she likes it. It's in her nature to enjoy sadness and pain. Ridiculous. Ridiculous? Aren't the biggest readers of those popular sad novels like you women? It's in your nature to enjoy tragedy, whether you admit it or not. If you're dissatisfied with this, you should blame the strange nature of you women. What does it have to do with men? Shut up. Wang Lu sneered. Even if I shut up, can it prove that you've won? You might as well kill me with your sword. You're not convinced. You don't believe that you women naturally like pain. This is not surprising, so I'll let you see it more clearly. Wang Lu said and reached out his hand to hook his finger at someone who has been watching the show. Wang Wu, let me ask you, do you naturally like to be whipped, abused, and trampled by others? The more painful your body and mind is, the happier you are. Can't you sleep if you don't break a few bones every day? Hearing this, the blue veins on Wang Wu's forehead bulged, and the vicious words in her heart were 10 times, 100 times more, rushed toward Wang Lu. However, she, after all, understood that there were priorities. Right now, Wang Lu needed to establish his victory, and this victory was not only about Wang Lu, but also about the safety of everyone. So she had to cooperate to the end. That's right. Wang Wu gritted her teeth and said word by word. You're right, my nature is like this. Wang Lu said to Dixian, did you hear that? Women are like this. If you're not satisfied, I can continue asking. I have absolute confidence in proving that they are all crying tears of joy. I just don't know if you're willing to listen. Of course, the other party was not willing to listen. Because the more she listened, the more she was moved, and the faith she had been holding on to for many years was gradually loosening. But she was even more unwilling to admit defeat. But before she could speak, Wang Lu said, you set the rules. Now that I've satisfied your conditions, you might as well just pull out your sword and go back on your words. Anyway, I've never expected you women to be willing to admit defeat. Ha 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 ha. As soon as he said that, the laughter of the source of chaos exploded in the white world. She doesn't admit defeat verbally, but the defense in her heart is riddled with holes. Now that things have come to this, even if she doesn't want to admit defeat, there's no way. As he spoke, the entire world bloomed with countless fine black cracks, and the world that belonged to heaven was broken in an instant. I've waited a long time for you to show a flaw. Wang Lu vaguely saw that when the world of heaven was broken, 2 shadows, one black and one white, gradually intertwined and fused into one. This process was very intense, but the level of what happened was far higher than reality. So much so that Wang Lu, with the cultivation of King Pill, could only see a scale claw from afar, and even this scale claw could not be seen clearly. If he could not see clearly, then so be it. At least Wang Lu knew that the source of chaos had finally seized the opportunity to swallow and fuse the old enemy that had been locked in a stalemate for many years. It seemed that this journey of asking the heaven could finally come to an end. It could barely be considered a glorious victory. Facing Dixian with King Pill, facing a bigot that did not speak logic and reason, he was able to crush her heart and cause her faith to waver. If it were anyone else in this world, it would be difficult for them to do better. Although the final victory did not rely on the sword in his hand, which went against the aesthetics of swordsmanship, the winner was not to be blamed, and Wang Lu would not haggle over it. The only problem now was, Wang Lu closed his eyes. He did not want to look back at the scene behind him. Yu Xinyao, by Shi, Lady Boss. He really did not want to think about the faces of these people. When he thought about it, it was as if his primordial spirit was injured by the god-slaying sword. That argument just now was only useful against Lu Li. If it was against Yu Xinyao, Do you mind being intimate with other women? Then it would definitely be a slap in the face. Therefore, although the problem of heaven was solved, his own problem was not. Not only was it not solved, it was even more serious. Because just now, when he eloquently argued in front of heaven, other people were not deaf, of course, they could hear it clearly. Wang Lu, what you said just now, was it all true? The voice of Lady Boss Feng Ling came from behind him. Women are born to be cheap. If they don't feel pain, they won't feel comfortable. I didn't expect you to have such a good understanding of women. In the future, when we have time, let's have a good exchange. Exchange what? Bodily fluids. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.